let me just declare my bias right up front. I am a capitalist. I believe in capitalism. I think capitalism is collectively the greatest thing the humanity's ever created. It has completely changed the world, and I'm going to prove it to you. Business is this great value creator, and the merchants are the heroes. They're not the bad guys. We can elevate humanity better, faster. I've known hundreds of entrepreneurs, and very few exceptions. They weren't primarily in it for the money.
So it was this spark that went in my mind. It's like, I found my passion. We're changing people's lives, and we're teaching you how to do that by leveraging Amazon to explode it. If you look at the comparison of trying to start a business anywhere else outside of Amazon compared to on Amazon, it's incredible.
I realized I wanted to do something different. I didn't want to have this corporate job with this week or two of vacation every year. And so I jumped in, and lo and behold, a year later, I was making enough that I could actually quit my corporate finance job in order to pursue this full time.
Only 50% of the population is cognitively hardwired to be an entrepreneur. And the other half of us were just not programmed that way. Imagine if you had a $10,000 or $20,000 a month residual coming that just took care of you, earning a small amount off the efforts of many versus 100% of just me.
Of Money Revealed. You know, we've been talking a lot in this series about investment, so I want to have an investment conversation with you. There's nowhere else on the planet where you can get this assembly of information that will talk to you about how to create wealth, how to protect wealth, and how to grow your wealth. So I think a great investment for you would be in Money Revealed. If you believe in this project and what we're doing and you're finding value in this information, then you should own it. So please make an investment in Money Revealed. There's multiple packages available. Just pick the one that's right for you and revisit this information over and over again. Now we have a great episode set up for you, so let's jump right into episode 5 of Money Revealed. MACKEY with great anticipation. He's a personal hero of mine. He's somebody I've admired for many, many, many years. And when I had the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with him about money and entrepreneurism in his life, it was a highlight for me. And now I get to share it with you. Enjoy my interview with Whole Foods co-founder and CEO, John MACKEY. John, thanks so much for your time. I really look forward to this interview.
Thanks for inviting me.
You have a foundation, I think, from your college days, maybe before, in philosophy, studying it intently. What role did that play in your life as an entrepreneur?
I mean, it played a huge role. People oftentimes ask the question, if you're studying philosophy, is like, what good is that for?
Right.
But philosophy really taught me how to think. It taught me how to think critically, rationally, to see what's a bad argument, what's a good argument, to be able to defend my positions with logic and reason and facts and evidence. And so few people actually do that. And most people are just go through life just being ruled by their emotions, and they're unable to actually ever sort of get clarity. So philosophy helped me see more clearly. And if you're going to be in business, deceiving yourself or fooling yourself is a very, very bad thing to do. You have to be able to see things clearly, or you're not going to make good decisions. So absolutely foundational.
And do you still use it to this day as far as your thinking and your process for how to make decisions?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I still study philosophy. Yeah. It's not like I figured everything out. So I'm still learning, still growing, and still enjoy studying philosophy. One of the things I do.
What got you started in being an entrepreneur and going into business?
I mean, I didn't self-identify as an entrepreneur for a long time. I didn't set out to be an entrepreneur. I mean, I didn't study any business classes when I went to the University of Texas and Trinity in San Antonio. I kept going back and forth between those two. And I basically just took electives. I studied philosophy and world literature, the humanities of all kinds, psychology, anthropology. I was trying to figure out the meaning of life and meaning of my life in particular, what my own purpose was. And I moved into this vegetarian co-op when I was 23 years old. It was a housing co-op. I think they had about 18 people living there, two per room. And I wasn't a vegetarian at that time, but I actually just thought I'd meet really interesting people in the vegetarian co-op. But I was interested in all things counterculture. And so there were, just a bunch of hippies living there, going to school. And I had a food awakening there where I learned how to cook. I learned about natural foods. I learned about organic foods. And the more I learned, the more passionate I got about it. So then I went to work at this small natural food store to earn some money. And I fell in love with retailing. And I thought to myself, I could do this. I could have my own store. And I went back to the co-op one night and pitched my girlfriend, and what do you think about opening our own store and be a vegetarian store? And she was very excited about it. I oftentimes think my life would have been perhaps very different if she had said, that is really a stupid idea. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go into business. It's a dumb idea. I might have dropped it right there. But when you're young and idealistic and you don't have as much to lose, we went out and hustled $45,000. We thought we needed 50, but we can only get 45, so we opened a little bit short. And it was in an old house. The first store was called Saferway. And I was just passionate about selling healthy food to people. People asked me what was the original purpose of Saferway, and it was like, well, it was to sell healthy food to people, have fun, and earn a living. And we did all of those things. Renee and I actually moved out of the co-op and moved into was in an old house where the first store was. So we lived on the first floor was a store, and the second floor was a cafe, a vegetarian cafe, and the third floor was an office, and where Renee and I had a futon, and we just slept there at night. So I literally lived in the first store. Wow. So I just kind of followed my heart, I followed my passion, and that led me on the journey. So I didn't like go to business school and say, there's a huge market opportunity in this whole natural organic. I've done a study on it, and wow, we think it's going to be X amount of hundreds of millions or billions of dollars someday, and we want to get in on the ground floor. It was like, I'm interested in healthy natural foods. I like doing it, so we did it.
And that's the interesting thing. You had no business school training, no business background. What made you think that you could open a retail store, deal with inventory, suppliers, the whole thing? Or did you not know entirely what you were getting into?
I mean, I think one of the advantages of being young is not only do you have a lot of energy, but you don't know what you can't do.
Right.
You don't yet know your limitations. And that enables the young we usually depend upon a lot of our breakthroughs with young people because they naturally think outside the box because they haven't never been in the box. And they naturally just tend to be more creative, and you see many of the innovations that are happening in our society that shift things are done by people in their 20s. I mean, in my generation, how old was Bill Gates when he started Microsoft, or Steve Jobs when he started Apple, or Michael Dell when he was in his college dorm selling computers? I mean, and now, how old was Mark Zuckerberg when he started Facebook? I mean, it's story after story after story of very young people that just went for it and were successful.
In line with that, skipping forward a minute, I serendipitously ran into you at a Whole Foods in Park City, Utah, and I saw you talking to the young people who were the workers in the store. So you still, and I wouldn't have known this, that you still show up at the stores, you talk to the people on the staff who are working there, you're interacting with them. What's the motivation behind you doing that?
I mean, it's one of the highest leverage things that I do, because rightly or wrongly, because I'm the co-founder and all the other founders left over 20 years ago, and the CEO for 40 years. within Whole Foods, I'm a legend. And with so many stores today, a lot of the team members, you'll never get a chance to meet me. So when I can tour stores and connect with the people, we know it really raises the morale. And so I used to go into the stores and I'd put my operations hat on and I'd see what was wrong with the store. But what I realized is I'm like the daddy, right? So they really want my approval. They don't want my criticism.
Right.
A lot of times they've gotten up at, come to the store at 3 in the morning to make it look as absolutely perfect as they can because they know I'm coming. The last thing they want to hear is how they could be doing it better.
Right.
And so I try to really restrict that type of negative feedback. And mostly I'm just trying to connect with people, thank them for their hard work, appreciate what they've done today, thank them for being part of our team, and approve of them because that's what they want, and that makes them happy, and that helps the morale of the store go up, and it helps our customers get better service. So I think it's actually one of the most impactful things I can do. I just regret now that I'm still just one man. I can't get to every store. Right. I meet people all the time. How long have you been working for Whole Foods? I've been working for Whole Foods 15 years. It's the first time I've met you.
Wow.
And I said, well, chances are you'll never meet me again. Let's make it count.
I could tell you they were beaming. Yeah, you could just see it. Like there was this sort of electricity.
It makes them feel special.
Yeah.
Today, he's paying attention to us. We matter. It's a self-esteem thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were starting out in Saferway, and you then transitioned into Whole Foods, I think you kind of merged with that company after 2 years. Did you have at that point a vision for what Whole Foods would become?
No. The whole vision thing, I think entrepreneurs have a bad habit of recasting their success and almost it was destined, or they look back and because of the human mind, the way it works, it looks for patterns, it looks for connections, it wants it to make all ordered sense. And so I always make a joke that I did not go up onto the top of the mountain and God did not speak to me and give me this assignment. And I have been carrying out God's will ever since. We did Whole Foods because Saferway was too small. We weren't a real grocery store. And we wanted to be a real grocery store initially. It was like, what if we could just have a bigger store that was like, you couldn't do one-stop shopping at Saferway. And Saferway was very pure. It was very idealistic. We didn't sell, it was vegetarian, and we didn't sell sugar, we didn't sell white flour, we didn't sell alcohol, we didn't even sell caffeine. So no coffee. And also, it just didn't do that much business. Basically, we narrowed our focus so narrow. We were so pure, and so this is the way people should eat, that we unnecessarily restricted the market too narrowly. So when we did the first Whole Foods market, we said, well, we're still going to be natural, still going to be organic, still going to be focused around health, and but we are going to sell some products that have sugar in them. We are going to sell beer and wine. We're going to sell coffee. We're going to sell meat. We're going to sell what people want to buy, but within the natural and organic framework. Right. That proved to be a very successful strategy because while Saferway struggled, Whole Foods became the highest volume natural food store in the United States within just a few months of opening. Wow. It was a huge success.
And that one was in Austin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that an ongoing struggle even through the decades of trying to reconcile kind of this moral or value framework with what's practical to go to the market with?
Yeah, it really bothers non-business people who don't have to meet a market test. They don't understand that you're ultimately in business to serve customers. And so we're frequently judged like I'm a vegan. So a lot of vegans can accuse me of being a hypocrite because you sell meat, and it's like I don't eat it, but customers want to buy it. I don't eat a lot of things Whole Foods sells, and you have to meet the market where you find it, or you'll go out of business ultimately. And so business people inherently understand that because they are all having to serve customers. And I always tell my vegan friends, like, hey, I'd like nothing better than to stop selling meat. And why don't you? I said, because the customers keep buying it. If they'd stop voting with their dollars for it, if they'd stop buying it, we'd stop selling it. Right. You're not doing a good job persuading people not to eat meat. Don't blame me because we're selling what the customers want to buy. I have never had that much problem. I've always seen, I've been an idealist, but I'm also a pragmatist. And what's the art of the possible? What is it possible to do today? And then over time, the art of the possible changes. You can do more in the future than you could do today. So you keep the long-term ideals in place while taking steps towards them, but you have a long-term vision, you have a long-term view. So I've never really had this kind of anguish that other people have. It's just always seemed like you do sometimes make some trade-offs, but they're necessary to meet the market as you find it.
Yeah, Ayn Rand used to talk about the problem if you have a contradiction between the moral and the practical, and you didn't have an anything goes standpoint. There was still a framework from which you operated.
We still had our quality standards.
That's right.
And they kept us from drifting too far. In a lot of ways, Whole Foods has always had these two elements within it that struggle with each other, two polarities.
Right.
One polarity is what I call you can call the foodie polarity.
Right.
Somebody that's really preoccupied with food and all the different aspects of it. And then within Whole Foods, there's a second element, which is the Puritan element. Food is not for pleasure, food is for health.
Right.
So food for pleasure versus food for health have struggled for the soul of Whole Foods. And sometimes one waxes and the other one wanes, and then the opposite occurs. So getting a good synthesis between those two has partly been what's led to our success. We've had elements of both. If you're a foodie, you can shop at Whole Foods and find really outstandingly high quality, good tasty food. And if you're a Puritan, if you're paleo, or if you're vegan, or if you're ketogenic, or whatever your particular diet is, Whole Foods has got what you want.
So if we were to extrapolate now to the general entrepreneurial and business world, for people who are saying, I've got a certain set of values I want to put in the marketplace, but I also realize I have to meet the market in order to be able to be successful. What type of framework or considerations could you give them? Let's say it's outside the food, but it might be something else.
Well, first thing I would do is, in terms of conscious capitalism, it's like first you ask what your purpose is. And you don't want to drift away from your purpose. As you go out and fulfill your business, it's always a risk that you will forget what your purpose is, why you're doing the business in the first place, what you're trying to accomplish. So the purpose acts as your North Star that keeps you on track. Even if you wander off, you can get back on track by going back to making sure this is aligned with your purpose.
Right.
And secondly, I think the stakeholder philosophy is very important. The stakeholders being the business doesn't exist only to create value for the investors and the owners. It also exists to create value for its customers, for the people that work there, for the suppliers that trade with it, for the communities that we're doing business in. And then, in a sense, the larger environment as well, minimize our environmental damage. So if you have a stakeholder philosophy, everything shifts. You begin to ask yourself, is this a win-win strategy for all of our stakeholders? Is this going to be good for if you're making decisions that are, say, good for your customers but bad for your employees, maybe that's not the best decision. And if you're making one that screws the suppliers, maybe that's not the best decision. So how do you make decisions where they're all going to simultaneously flourish? And if you keep purpose and stakeholders in mind, those type of contradictions and trade-offs tend to get resolved pretty easily.
So with people that have been doing that and maybe they've found success in some type of a career or an entrepreneurial venture, and over time they said, I've worked hard, I've made some money. What do you, as far as that type of a person that obviously doesn't have a Whole Foods level of success, what do you think they should be thinking about as far as their own wealth protection or wealth development?
Well, first, of course, if you want to create great wealth, the best way to do it is to own businesses, a business or businesses, and generally concentrated. And then that compounds, in a sense, over a long period of time, and that's how large wealth is built. If you look at almost all the super wealthy people, they got it through building something and some type of business. And from real estate to computers to software to, Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world, He built it through the internet, and there's been so many different strategies. And as the world technologically evolves, there's always going to be new strategies, like the next thing, the next big thing will always be coming along. I mean, you take Uber, for example. First time I did an Uber, and it was like, why didn't I think of this? This seems so obvious, right? And I could have thought of it. And props I would have if I'd been in a different generation, a younger person.
Right.
One thing I always encourage people to do is, as you go along, don't get too greedy, in the sense you should be taking some off the table. It's like a poker metaphor. It's always good to, you start out with a stake, eventually if you're doing well, you pull out the stake and then some, and then you're just playing on your winnings in a way. So if catastrophe occurs, you're still a winner.
Right.
And I have always done that with Whole Foods. I have gradually and steadily sold stock for we went public in 1992. That was the first time I sold any, but I probably gradually sold it all the way up through the Amazon acquisition a year ago. And also, I really believe in the philosophy of, I think I initially picked this up when I read a book called The Richest Man in Babylon.
Yeah.
And The Richest Man in Babylon, one of the principles is pay yourself first. So basically, take at least 10% out of your paycheck and put it away and invest it, and you don't touch it. It's just, you're going to let it compound and grow over a long period of time. And that's not that hard to do once you get in the habit of it, because it doesn't really change your style of your lifestyle, because you used to live on 10% less than you're making, and you did fine. And so there's a bad habit of people tending to, as their salary ratchets up, they just ratchet up their lifestyle. And I don't think you should ratchet up your lifestyle. I think you should, and we see this in cultures that are wealthy cultures. That the Chinese, for example, are very good at saving. The Jewish faith has been also put an emphasis on saving and investing. And that's just a lifestyle habit to not, in America we tend to go for flashy cars or big screen televisions or the latest, hottest new iPhone or whatever. We're out there chasing the Teslas and I just always believe that you should be about creating lasting wealth, and that's through being reasonably frugal and saving and investing. And that's the proven over and over and over and over again strategy to create and maintain wealth. And I mean, if you're 24 years old and you've created Facebook, then this is not you don't have to worry about this. But that's a very small percentage of the people that hit that type of jackpot in their lifetime. It's, I mean, 100 people maybe, out of 7.5 billion or 8 billion. I think it's better to, whatever you're doing, save the money, invest it, and then keep doing it your whole life, and you will become a millionaire and potentially very wealthy by the time you reach late middle age.
Speaking of Whole Foods and investing, I remember back after Whole Foods went public and one opened up in my town near where I grew up, Ridgewood, New Jersey.
Yeah.
And I remember they had a direct traffic in and out of that parking lot when it first opened. It was just so busy. And my mother called me up saying, "You got to buy Whole Foods stock." And at the time I had an E-Trade account, and I'm like, I think it was like $25 a share or something. And I said, it looks like all the growth is already priced into it. I'm not seeing it, which just shows like, I'm not a stock picker. That's why it's not my
I'm on the board of directors of the Motley Fool. And that has been really good for me because I've made a ton of money through basically following their stock advice. And their basic stock advice is the best companies always look fully priced or overvalued. But I mean, Amazon's gone up 200x since it did its initial public offering. Microsoft's gone up even more because it's had a longer time to compound. And in no time, maybe once or twice in their histories, after a big market washout, you could say that's a really good value. Problem is when you have that kind of market wipeout, everybody's too scared to invest because maybe we're going into a Great Depression. And so it's just better to realize if you get a great company, you just buy it and hold it and let the compounding work. And here's the thing, you'll have some duds. I actually own 136 stocks. I counted them up recently.
Wow.
And every year I sell off a dozen or so that for tax loss harvesting because they were duds.
Right.
They didn't work out. But the ones that do work out, they go at 5x, 10x, 20x. And just one or two of those pays for all the other losers you'll ever have. And they just continue to compound. And they're compounding tax-free. You're not having to pay capital gains taxes on those stocks as they work their magic. So I diversified. I realized, of course, in hindsight, that if I had kept all of my money in Whole Foods, I never sold any shares, I'd be far wealthier than I am today, because Whole Foods just did so well since we created it. We were a 30x gainer since our IPO to the sale in over 25 years. However, remember, I bought when we had I got almost all my shares when the company was $45,000, and I had 10,000 of the 45,000.
Right.
That's up 1,000x.
Right.
So I was just prudent in the sense that I kept taking money off the table, and it's done well on my other investments. But it would have been foolish for me to keep all the money in Whole Foods for all those years, because what would be more horrible? You do something for 40 years. At one time, you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and then, or maybe $1 billion, and then it all comes crashing down. You'd probably blow your brains out. You'd be so depressed. So I never did that. I was always more prudent, I suppose.
And for people in the advice saying, if you're saving 10% and you're saying invest it, you find companies you like?
Honestly, I broke down my investing philosophy recently because I did a talk at Freedom Fest on it. So 30% of our assets are in public stocks, and about another 30% is in index mutual funds, like Vanguard Total Stock Market Index and Total World Markets and things like that. So very diversified, but through low-cost index funds. And then we have about another 30% that are in basically short-term cash and bonds, because if the stock market has a massive, complete meltdown, you don't want to have all your eggs in the stock market. So at my wife's and my age, it's prudent for us to have a sizable chunk that's going to be, it may not grow, but it's not going to lose very much, even if you have a market washout. And then about 10% in real estate and some venture capital investing. That kind of is how it works out.
Wow. So was there a period of time as the CEO that you were taking, if I remember, like $1 a year salary or something like that?
Oh yeah, I haven't really been compensated for 13 years now, since 2006, so 12 years.
And what was the reason that you didn't want to take compensation, or did you take it in other ways?
No, I didn't. My stock options were that I would have been entitled to were given to our foundations, and that served as sort of like an endowment for those foundations. It's very hard for other people to understand. I had enough money. I was fabulously wealthy. I didn't need any more. I wanted to take money off the table in terms of what my motivations were, and I wanted to embrace a servant leadership, which I talk about in Conscious Capitalism. And I thought taking a huge compensation or huge stock option grants would dilute the purity of that service attitude. And the only time I regretted it was back when the market wiped out in 2008. Whole Foods market stock went down 90%. And my wife was very upset. She said, "You got to start taking a salary. We got to pay the bills." I said, "Do you know how much I'd be the laughing stock? I can go back and start taking a salary. Forget it. We'll get through this. We'll sell some other assets." But it was the right thing for me to do. It was what my heart called me to do. Does that mean I recommend it for other people? No. It was just right for me.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I think that's, in the end, what people have to figure out is just what is right for them as compared to trying to perfectly model somebody else's life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've always been a guy I'm very intuitive, try to be in touch with my own inner purpose, my own higher calling and my own values, and it was clear to me it was the right decision. I've never regretted it. It was other than my wife being mad at me briefly, it was absolutely the correct decision for me.
What motivated you to start the Conscious Capitalism Alliance?
Well, That started because I read a book called Firms of Endearment by a guy named David Wolf and Raj Sisodia. And Whole Foods was one of they identified 30 firms that were basically loved by their customers, loved by their employees, loved by their investors, loved by all their stakeholders. And those were firms of endearment. We were one of them. And when I read that, I know this is going to sound sort of weird now, because that was 12 or 13 years ago. It was like, we're not alone. I thought Whole Foods was this weird, super weird company that nobody else was doing what we were doing. I had no idea there were other people out there, other well-known companies that were also had a higher purpose. We're also taking care of stakeholders. We're also had a different style of leadership, servant leadership. And when I met David and Raj, we started talking about, let's start an organization that let's spread these ideas. And because one thing we discovered is that the companies that are firms of endearment, or now what we call conscious capitalists, they actually financially do better as well. It's because they just synergize at a higher level when you've got happy customers and happy employees and happy suppliers. That just kind of raises everything up a couple of notches higher. So we realized these ideas work, and we're not alone, and we need to kind of put the message out to help other, particularly young entrepreneurs, to say they're not going to be stupid or suckers for following this philosophy. They're actually going to be more successful.
Well, so I guess in a sense, the idea is that there's this moral virtue to capitalism, that it's not this, and that is that most people say, hey, to be really successful as a capitalist, you have to be in this dog-eat-dog kind of world or environment, as compared to saying, there's a moral virtue here.
Well, Patrick, you've just hit on one of my higher purposes, is that when I do my conscious capitalism talk publicly, which I do many times a year, I usually start out by saying, let me just declare my bias right up front. I am a capitalist. I believe in capitalism. I think capitalism is collectively the greatest thing that humanity's ever created. It has completely changed the world, and I'm going to prove it to you. And then I show what's happened since capitalism came in and how much progress the world has made. I have no patience whatsoever for socialists or people who are anti-capitalist. They're ignorant of history. They don't understand business. Business is this great value creator, and the merchants are the heroes. They're not the bad guys. They have higher purposes, and basically the intellectuals and the aristocrats have always hated business. They've always persecuted the successful minorities that were in business, the Jews in the West, Chinese in the East, and they've looked down on commerce as greedy and selfish and exploitative, and yet it has been commerce and business that has helped lift humanity up, to help elevate humanity. So in conscious capitalism, we believe business is inherently good because it creates value. We reject the idea that it's all about the money. I've known hundreds of entrepreneurs, and very few exceptions. They weren't primarily in it for the money. Yeah, they wanted to make money, but they were mostly following some kind of passion or dream, or they wanted to do something in the world, and the money that was necessary. So for them, they could say it's a way to keep score. It shows that we're doing the right thing. The money empowers my lifestyle, helps me to be free. There's lots of, but the money itself was not. Maybe in the financial part of capitalism, Wall Street, it's just about the money, but not in the entrepreneur world for the most part. That's not the way I found it to be. It's not the way it is for me. So conscious capitalism was about, and still is about, helping people. Business is good inherently, but it can be better. If you become more conscious of purpose and stakeholders, we can elevate humanity better, faster. And business people need to wake up. Stop falling for the tales that the class enemy, the intellectuals, say about us, which is that it's all about the money, all they care about is money. And start talking about maximizing your purpose. Start talking about how you're making the world a better place. And inherently, business makes the world a better place, but it can also be philanthropic. It can also be socially responsible. These are things we think are important as well.
Yes, I mean, for the conscious capitalist who's the entrepreneur, money, I guess, becomes a means of expanding the range of the purpose. That's more what money means.
Exactly. Philanthropy just comes from generosity. It comes from an overflow of abundance that says, of course I want to help. I'll do what I can because I care, because I'm a caring human being. I'm alive. I see there's suffering in the world, and if I can do something to lessen it, then I definitely am not going to be sitting there counting my money feeling, because you know, you're going to die. There's no getting out of here alive. We're all going to die.
Right.
So it's not so much the legacy as just, if you can help people while you're alive, why wouldn't you want to do that? It just seems so obvious to me.
You used the term, I think, servant leadership. What do you mean by that?
Well, I contrast servant leadership with what the kind of leadership we frequently get, which is self-aggrandizement. There's people trying to get as much money, as big a hogs at the trough, trying to get as big a meal as they possibly can get, and the way business is often caricatured by its enemies. So the servant leader turns that on its head and says, you know, I'm in here, I'm serving the higher purpose of this organization. I've internalized that higher purpose, I made it my own, and I'm serving all the stakeholders. I want all the stakeholders to flourish, and I'm in service to them. Those are the two biggest parts of it, and then our world is crying out for more conscious leaders. It really is. If we're going to get through the polarities that we have politically and a lot of the challenges that we have, we need leadership to resonate at this higher level. And so two of my friends and I have started, in fact, one of the things I have to do when we finish here is we've got a book proposal out called 12 Virtues of a Conscious Leader. And that's going to be like a sequel to Conscious Capitalism. We have 2 chapters in leadership and conscious capitalism, and people tell me those are their favorite chapters. So it's like, okay, we're going to expand those into a full-scale book, and we're talking about the virtues that you want conscious leaders to cultivate, that you have to practice virtues. I mean, some of these are timeless virtues, like you cultivate courage, integrity in all things, dare to love. I mean, but then also about the importance of customers, put customers first. Today, in the technology world we live in, you have to learn how to think exponentially. So we're just going to have a chapter on each one of these 12 virtues and give ways for people to understand what that virtue is and how do they practice it daily. To be a servant leader or to be a highly ethical human being today, you have to practice it. It doesn't just automatic. To be a good leader, you got to study it. You got to practice it. You got to work at it. It's not just, leaders they're made. They're not born. People might have a natural desire to be leaders when they're kids, but that doesn't mean they're any skillful at it.
Right.
Good leaders are skillful leaders, and that takes practice, particularly practice of virtues.
You know, it's interesting, you know, being on the, I guess, the other side of conscious capitalism, meaning, you know, I'm the recipient of being in an entrepreneurial community who, you know, joined conscious capitalism, you know, studied it, and you know, the things you were talking about. And I think the excitement amongst my peers, other entrepreneurs, other business owners, et cetera, was the idea of a moral sanction in what we were doing, as compared to feeling like, you know, we're either greedy because we want to succeed and expand our companies, et cetera.
We're the heroes, Patrick.
Yeah.
We're not the bad guys. We're the heroes. We're the ones. That doesn't make us better than other people.
Right.
It's just the calling of leadership is to help elevate humanity, and you got to answer the call. And I think that is part of the community, is recognizing that we have a special role to play. We can help make the world a better place, and let's get on with it.
What do you want your biggest legacy to be after all these decades of what you've done in the world?
I think one way to understand it is that, because I have people come up all the time and say, man, you've done so many amazing things, you must be so proud. And I say, you know, I don't think about it. It's like the fun part in business is not what you have done, it's what you're going to do.
Right.
The creative process is what's fun. If you ask an artist like Picasso, he didn't care about his old paintings. It's what he was working on right then and there. The projects that we throw ourselves into is what gives our life meaning.
Right.
And I mean, someday, maybe, I hope never, I hope I actually die working on projects. But possibly someday, I got nothing else going on, I'll look back and say it's been a pretty good life. But right now I'm too busy living it, too busy creating the next big thing that I'm excited about. I think that's the key to, I think that's one of the keys to happiness, is to be alive, to be creative, to be engaged. And so then legacy is not something I have time to think about. Somebody else can think about it if I have a worthwhile legacy after I'm gone. I'm not too worried about it right now. So I believe the engaged life, the purposeful life, for me, is the life that's led to great happiness.
Yeah.
And I actually think most people would be happier if they're doing meaningful things they care about.
You mentioned 2008 and how that was kind of a tough time. Are there any other low points? I mean, all entrepreneurs I think go through them, and they have to try to find some inspiration to get through them.
Oh man, I mean, remember I've got 40 years now, so there have been a ton of low points. I mean, most recently it was a low point when our same-store sales, our comps went negative, and we got shareholder activists that were trying to throw out our board, throw me out, take over the company, and then sell it to Albertsons or Kroger or somebody like that. The Amazon solution, they were the perfect fit for us, but that was a low point that we ended up having an elegant solution for, the merger with Amazon. So that was definitely a low point. I mean, those guys launched their attack on Whole Foods the day I released my second book 16 months ago called The Whole Foods Diet. And that wasn't an accident. They immediately said, look at this guy, he's on a book tour, he's not running the company.
Wow.
So I had to stop the book tour, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, well, early on we had our flood, and when the first year we relocated Safer Way and we opened the first Whole Foods market, as I said, it became the highest sales natural food store in the United States within just a few months.
Right.
And then 9 months after we opened, Austin had a 100-year flood. And we were in the flood zone. We had 8 feet of water in our store. We were literally out of business. We were washed down into the river. And that was definitely a low point. But we didn't die, even though we didn't have insurance. That's when I really first began to understand about stakeholders. I didn't have a word for it then. But the next day after the flood, we showed up to start cleaning up the mess, not knowing whether we didn't have enough money to buy new inventory or anything. But there were all these sort of semi-strangers. I kind of knew them, but they didn't work for Whole Foods, that were there cleaning up the store with us.
Wow.
And then as we found out, they were our customers and they were our neighbors. And they just loved Whole Foods, so they were going to pitch in and help. And a lot of those people pitched in and helped all the way until we got reopened a month later. We had our suppliers fronted us new inventory, even though they weren't, on credit, which we didn't really have the money to pay them if we didn't get the business back going again. Our stakeholders literally didn't let us die. They rebirthed us. So that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about stakeholder philosophy. But that was a low point because I thought we were dead. I was wondering what I was going to do next. And then over the years, there have been a couple of coups or attempted coups that failed, where they tried to had ambitious executives teaming up with dissident directors of the board who thought my time was over. I mean, if you're an outspoken entrepreneur who thinks out of the box, you're not conventional, and that always irritates certain people. And when you're doing well, they credit you with a certain visionary genius, but when the business is doing poorly, they think it's time for you to go because you've lost your magic touch. So I had to weather a couple of those in the 40-year period as well. And I mean, there's personal stuff that happens and tragedies occur and people you love die and lots of low periods. But I mean, entrepreneurs are sort of inherently optimistic people, or they would never start a business.
Right.
The odds against them are huge. I've always been very optimistic and very resilient. I tend to bounce back quickly. I wake up the next day and you figure out, okay, how are we going to solve this problem? What are we going to do? And you do it.
How important is the team around you in being able to
It's one of the 12 virtues we're listing in a conscious leadership, which is always upgrade the team. You are no better than your team. If your team is good, you'll be good. And if your team isn't good, they make you look bad. So you've got to always be upgrading the team. That doesn't mean that you're always replacing people. It just means the team itself can be learning and growing and evolving, but it's got to get better because you've got to get better. So I feel like part of my success at Whole Foods is I just had some amazing people I've worked with. I mean, amazing, very talented, creative people that complemented. I have certain strengths, but I have a ton of weaknesses. And I've had the wisdom to sort of recognize my weaknesses and say, I better get somebody to help me in that area, or we're gonna, I mean, I don't think I have all the answers. So yeah, team, extremely, extremely important.
Those initial team members that, I guess, made the foundation for Whole Foods to be able to grow to what it's become, how did you source them? How did you find them? What did you look for?
I mean, initially, they just came to us. I mean, we had a certain energy, a certain culture, and we just attracted people. They just wanted to be part of it. It's magnetic. When you're growing and you're successful, a growing business is great fun, and it brings people in that want to be part of it. That's a very different thing when a business peaks and maybe starts to decline a bit. One of the great things about our merger with Amazon is we've renewed our growth, and that is very energizing for everybody. When everybody wants to feel like they're a winner, and if you say have stores and the stores are not doing as well this year as they were doing the previous year, you don't feel good about yourself. You tend to blame yourself, even though it's not your fault necessarily, but you still don't feel good about your work because it's not working. But when it's growing, it's like, yeah, we're doing good, we're winning, and we're getting, by the way, more money as a result of this success. So growth is fun. It really is. Growing a bit. I don't know anything more fun than growing a business, or I would have done it. It's a blast.
At one time recently was kind of deep in contemplation, trying to figure out what the next thing I should do is, and the basic message that came back to me was, whatever's the most fun.
Well, remember I said the higher purpose initially for Whole Foods was sell healthy food to people, earn a living, and have fun. So those are still all there. Now our purpose has been articulated a little bit more succinctly to, our purpose is to nourish people and the planet. So that's Whole Foods' higher purpose. And that key is the word nourish, because there's so many different levels of nourish. On the surface, of course, it means healthy food. But then you're also nourishing the souls of the people that work with you. The planet is our overall connection that we're doing. We buy from all over the planet. And it's our environmental statement as well, our commitment to sustainability in what we do. So fun, absolutely. I mean, building a business is fun. That's why I'm still doing it.
John, I very much appreciate you taking time and sharing your wisdom. Do you have a final thought for the people that would be watching this?
My final thought is that I'm going to be 65 in about 10 days. And it goes by pretty fast. Life is much short. When you're young, you look out and you see this horizon out there, and you think I got forever to get there. It's no big deal, but you're actually going to get to that horizon much quicker than you realize. And because of that, because none of us get out of here alive, life's too short to not really go for it. You go for the things that give you meaning and purpose and fun, and you won't get to the end of your life with regrets. I think to get to the end of life and think, life's too short to settle for less than your very best effort. Things that you care about the most, you should go for it. And there's no guarantee you're going to be successful, but there's a guarantee that if you don't try, you'll spend your life second-guessing yourself, and you'll get to the end of it with regrets that you didn't give it your best, you give it your all.
Terrific. Thank you so very much for taking this time, and I look forward to getting your new book and experiencing that, and to also see the growth of Whole Foods and its new relationship with Amazon. For me, it's been great.
Thanks, Patrick. I'm excited about all of those things too.
Coming up next, we have an interview that kind of caught me off guard. I was expecting something different than what I got, but in a good way, it caught me off guard. We have Jason KATZENBACK and Mike MCCLARY from Amazing.com. Jason is the CEO of the company, and I have to tell you that I sort of understood what they did, and I knew about their business and the type of training they were doing, and it was about how to set up your own business on Amazon and make it work and thrive and grow and create a brand there. So I said, I think that's kind of interesting, an interesting business model. I know they've realized a lot of success. But when I started leaning in and listening to more of the details and the structure of what they did and how they did it and what they trained people on, suddenly a whole new world opened up for me that I never saw before. As a matter of fact, my partner Jeff Hayes and I, as we were reviewing the interview after it was over, both said, we want to get this training for our kids. There's real possibility there. So I have a son that's a senior in college. This is another great business opportunity for him that I learned through these guys, and now I want to share it with you. Also, I want to remind you, you can and should own Money Revealed. So just know that that's available to you. This is great information, and it doesn't stop here. Take a look at this interview. Even if it's something that you say, well, this directly doesn't apply to me, indirectly, there's a lot you will learn. So lean in, learn from this. You're going to really enjoy this interview. Jason, Mike, thanks for taking the time to sit with us and have this conversation. So the joke is almost too easy, and it's probably not even funny to you anymore, but you have an amazing story, right? So let's talk about your lives maybe before amazing.com, and then we'll get into what you're doing right now. So Jason, why don't you start? Tell us your background.
Yeah, so originally I was going the corporate route with life, but back in 2003, I remember the CEO decided to abolish all bonuses that year, and I just realized that I needed to stop working my butt off to line other people's pockets, and it needed to be more about what I could spend my time on to give me the most ROI. So I started my first business back in 2005, and it was a pretty cool success. You know, that first year we did over $3 million. And it just really got me the bug for the internet. I went from, working for a corporate company where I was working all these hours to try to improve my lifestyle, and I found I just had to work more and more hours, and it didn't seem like I had any freedom. And then I started my own business, and all of a sudden I could work from home, I could travel. As long as I had an internet connection, it was good. Now back then, Wi-Fi wasn't like it was now, so the freedom wasn't quite the same.
Was it a related industry, or was it
Well, what I did initially was I started with little ebooks.
Mm-hmm.
So I would research topics online, and I would figure out what people were looking for, whether it was learning to get your driver's license, health issues, and then I would hire ghostwriters to write the content, and then I would use SEO, a lot of article creation, article marketing to just dominate the search engines, and I started doing really, really well. So then I started teaching that, and I launched a product in 2005 called Portal Feeder that was based off of that, how to build websites to be able to promote affiliate programs, products, anything like that. And that's when I realized the feedback I got that I was very good at teaching, because I was I had a lot of empathy with the people. I would really work hard with them. I cared a lot about customer support, and we got a lot of feedback on that early, that it was our customer support that made the difference, because we really followed through with the customers. And so I started refining that membership model and teaching model. And it was always based on the businesses I was doing. It's like I had to be a success in the business I was teaching. And so initially, starting back in 2005, it was focused on SEO and PPC, but all Google related. And then in 2010, that's when all the penguins and all those things came out from Google with the different algorithm changes. And I realized I was kind of doing the same thing again. I was working for someone else. I wasn't creating an asset, because I was building businesses always based on hacks and how you can trick the search engines, rank on the search engines. But then if suddenly the search engines decide to change their algorithm, it's like you have to start over. And that's when I met Matt Clark, actually. It was in, I'm not sure if you've heard of the Mavericks. It's a mastermind group.
Yannick Silver?
Yeah. And so we met in that. I joined that in 2011, and me and Matt got into a mastermind group. And so here's this young 24-year-old kid at the time doing like $100,000 a month selling his own product on Amazon. It was just mind-boggling to me. It's like, how can you have your own manufacturing? And he's like, well, I private label it. And I knew private label from the context of content, like for someone to repurpose content. But he was actually doing it with products. So he started teaching me that. And so when I launched my first product, within 4 months, I was doing over $100,000 a month profit.
Wow.
And that was because I was able to take all my SEO skills, all my marketing skills from Google, and translate it onto Amazon. Now, I also had a little bit of a helping hand, because at that time, Dr. Oz was really pushing health supplements like Garcinia cambogia, raspberry ketones. And my first product was a raspberry ketone. And so that really helped. But The cool thing is the product I started selling was the exact product that my manufacturer was selling, but because I differentiated it, used all my marketing skills, I was selling my product for 3 times as much as my manufacturer, and I was ranked number 1, and they were like number 30 kind of thing. So it was, so the bug hit, and we started teaching people the Amazon model.
Can I ask a question about that? I'm really
Sure,
curious.
sure.
So your so basically you were white labeling from your manufacturer, and when you started outperforming them on such a significant basis, did they at least like take notice and say, hey, maybe we should copy some of what you're doing, or were there any conversations around that?
No, interesting enough, as much as I thought that it would actually hurt me once they figured out who I was, the opposite, because manufacturers, most of them, that's their business model, is the manufacturing side. They're not marketers. And so they almost just dabble in that kind of stuff. But, a lot of our students have asked that, like, what about when the manufacturer finds out that you're selling the products? Like, well, that's not their business model. It's like my business model isn't manufacturing. Now, sometimes sellers will start to develop so much they build their own facility to manufacture it. I don't want to get into that. I don't want to have more warehouses and employees and those kind of things. So no, and in fact, it was more of a partnership. They started giving me better deals because I was such a high-profile seller, and they kept dropping the price on me. So it was just, the only problem was, the one drawback of that industry is I didn't like selling that product. And that's something with any business. Like, I think, it's great to start a testing business. Like, when you're going into business, you always, like, don't look at it like I'm going all in on this. Like, test the waters, make sure, and that's what we tell a lot of our students is, pick a product and learn the business model, learn the system, and then start building a real business.
Did you think there was gravity there? In other words, so you said Dr. Oz was promoting this, so was that what got your attention and said, I think I can
No, it was research. It was just following our strategies of figuring out what are the best sellers on Amazon, how many reviews do they have, how much competition does it look like they have, is this an emerging market? Because Amazon, I had in the mindset at first it was like Google, like if you're not number 1, you're nothing. But it's not like that. Like on Amazon, people browse, you can direct traffic to it. It's very different that way. So it was never that. It was all about, no, this opportunity says, let's see. And as I started doing the business model, I started feeling I didn't like selling people a weight loss supplement when their responses when because I tried following up, giving them value, saying, as you buy this product, here's some exercise tips, all that. And I'd get responses like, if I wanted to exercise, I wouldn't have bought your product. And so you just start feeling guilty. It's like, well, as much as they say it works, this isn't really good for you. So I've actually gotten out of the health industry, and now I focus primarily on the house and home. But
so I could see the trajectory into Amazon for you, and we'll get more specifically into those aspects. But I want to know Mike's how did you arrive here?
Sure. Well, I'll go back even a little further, and probably people don't know this, but I actually sold paint right out of college.
Paint?
Yeah. So I put myself through college by working at a paint factory that my dad worked at. And in the early 90s when I graduated, the job market was not there for anyone. And luckily, the factory called me back up and said, you realize we have more jobs other than just factory jobs. We have professional jobs. And luckily, I was able to take a job with them. No idea that I was going to be selling paint. But I took that and moved to Alabama. And then within a few months, they realized that computers were now all the rage in the early 90s. And Mike, the 20-something kid out of college, must know computers. Didn't, but I vowed to learn them. And so I moved to Chicago, really got into the whole data analysis with the company as computers were taking off. And that led me to another job of, like, once I realized like data and computers was where I wanted to go, I got into consulting business then. I started traveling, consulting. I found a client that I was doing a lot of data analysis with, a telecom company, and they actually got me involved in the finance side of it. And so shortly thereafter, I became a finance director for a large telecom company.
What does that mean to be a finance director? Like, what kind of stuff did you do?
Yeah, so I focused a lot on the revenue recovery side, where a business, you get so big, you don't realize where you're leaking money.
Right.
You just look at the numbers, the top line, the bottom line. You don't realize that there's all these little gaps and holes in your system. So my job was to find those gaps and plug them. And we did that with data. And I always loved research. I love, analyzing what's coming in, what's going out, and where's the delta between those two.
Right.
Right.
And I really found that that was a great spot for me. And so after doing that for them for a while, I loved the work I was doing, but I felt chained down. I was this guy that sat in an office. I had a team working with me. We're always looking, it was mostly cable at the time. Cable did not have a really good, perception among people. And so I didn't have this feeling that I was bringing joy to people's lives, doing anything like that.
Right.
And definitely not my own life. I had a lot of stress in that job. So it was a great group of people, but I wasn't really feeling fulfilled. So then it was about 2012. I realized I wanted to do something different. I didn't want to have this corporate job with this week or two of vacation every year. I was making good money, but I was stressed out and not seeing my family. And luckily, I saw an email come by, talked about, hey, there's great opportunity on Amazon. It must have been months after, Jason and Matt had started really, finalizing and fine-tuning how to build a business on Amazon. And I was one of the first people to get this email, and it just really, stoked something inside of me to make me realize this seems like a good opportunity. And I remember, hearing about the training, and it all just clicked. Why go out there and try to invent a brand new product? Find something that people already want. There's already a demand.
Right.
That's half the equation of selling. If you know that there's a demand for something, then create something that fulfills that demand or something that even does better than that. And that's what the model taught me. And so I jumped in, I took this, I learned how to build my own business on Amazon, how to build a brand of products. I had no idea. The products that I launched, my first product was a leather conditioner. I didn't own anything made of leather.
I'm actually looking for one of those right now. Maybe I'll have to talk to you about that after
this. Yeah.
Go ahead.
But I knew I could source it in the United States. I knew there was, a low quantity to get going with. The price was right. I knew I could make a good profit margin. And most of all, there was a demand for it and not too much competition at the time. So I started off with that, and lo and behold, a year later, I was making enough that I could actually quit my corporate finance job in order to pursue this full time. And it's just kind of taken off from there, and a lot of other things happened since then as well.
Yeah.
So, and I want to get into that in a moment, but when did the transition come from you being a customer, of the company to actually coming into the company?
So I'd say probably started about 6 months after I started, doing, learning how to build a business. And we actually met in Austin for the first time. There was a live event for all the people learning how to this new business model. We got to meet for the first time. At that point, it wasn't just a virtual community, everyone talking on Facebook or in a private group. It was 500-600 people in a room, face to face, meeting Jason, meeting Matt, and then talking about all of our successes, our failures, what was working, what wasn't working. And what was amazing about that, not to use amazing again, was how much everyone was sharing with each other.
Yeah.
We had 500-600 people that you thought were competitors of each other, but they're all helping each other out because the world out there is so big. There's so much demand for everything. There's no point in trying to keep it all to yourself. And so when I started sharing more and more of what I was finding out, because let's face it, two guys can't figure everything out and do it all the time. They're running, a large business, bringing all kinds of students. They need other people to help. And so I came in as more of a mentor in that role. There's probably a handful of us in that. And then after another 6 months of doing mentoring, then they realized we need someone to help with training.
Right.
And so I came in and started doing training about 6 months later. And then a few years down the road, as it was really building the rapport, the relationship, we're all, we realize we're in this together. We're helping change the world. We're changing lives. We're building a great business that's expanding beyond Amazon and beyond just e-commerce. Realized it was, a better idea to bring me in full time to really help, with the business and the customer support and also the building of the products to make sure they're as good as they can be.
Yeah, if I just want to add one thing on that. So he's talking about our events. When our first event, what really surprised us, and when he talks about changing people's lives, was that fact. And that's one of the reasons we pulled Mike in too, because he has a lot of empathy for people. And because it's, one thing to teach people, but if you're not relating to them, if you're not understanding them, you can't help them. And at the end of the event, we had, the whole room was lined up around the room, and it took us an hour to go through of everyone wanting to take a picture with me and Matt, shake our hands and tell us how we changed their lives. So it was this spark that went in my mind. It's like, I found my passion. We're changing people's lives. And it's, oftentimes you hear about passion, follow your passion, find your passion. And I used to get stuck in those mindsets of like, how can I be passionate about something? Like, I got to find my passion. And you see people that are health experts and all that. But it's when all of a sudden you find it, and it was changing people's lives, the energy it gave, and just the spark that we saw in Mike and how he wanted to affect people's lives. And so he's definitely been an asset. He's a very successful seller of his own brands. but he's got a real knack for being able to relate to people and help teach them. So it's been a really good partnership.
So amazing, is legendary in the digital marketing world because the size of some of the launches you've done,
Yeah.
it's people know about them. And it's this whole concept of the virtual world. But what gets my attention is, you decide to have a live event, which is like the, kind of like the other direction a little bit. So what was the internal dialogue saying, hey, this is all about how to be virtual and really build a good business, a profitable business virtually. Let's get everybody together live. So what was the impetus behind that?
It's about camaraderie and sharing ideas, and the fact that, over the 7 years before that, I went from being in an office to working in my home and going through a lot of ups and downs. Working from your home can have a mental challenge at times. You get depressed, you feel alone, you don't have people around you that can relate to you, can bounce things off. So it's really about creating that community. And we also knew that we wanted to have an experience, so not only to help people create a community, but also to help connect people that can help one another. One of the biggest things that me and Matt did originally was we created this mastermind group. And so I started selling in October. We had the mastermind group in November, and then every one of us in that mastermind group by February were crushing it. And so it really opened our eyes too, that you have to be sharing. As Mike said, there's just too much to teach. And so it was really just about how do we create community with people? How do we make people feel they belong? And how do we get that camaraderie so people feel that they're not just on an island by themselves doing this business, that there's actually something more to this. And it just worked. It really did.
Did you have, I guess this is really a question for you because you're there at the point in time, but when you got together with Matt and you said, let's put together this product and this project and let's go launch this, did you anticipate the size it would be?
No. I was going for, my target was the John Reese, Frank Kern kind of $1 million launch,
Right.
The Mike Phil Same kind of thing. And what we did originally, what we launched was 3 products in one. It was originally called the Amazon Money Machine, and then Amazon let us know that you can't do that. So we quickly changed it. And thankfully at that time, we were nobody. So we had time, we changed it to the Amazing Money Machine and then the Amazing Selling Machine. John Reese actually helped us change that. But when we started, we were focused on private label, wholesale, drop shipping, and Kindle, because those were the 3 aspects of Amazon. But after the year of doing that and all the community and testimonials, we were looking like, people were making a few $1,000s a month with Kindle. Some were doing okay with with wholesale. But private label, we had people crushing it. We had one guy, David Paul Doyle, actually, he was one of our first guys that he's right now NatureWise, and he's one of the biggest health brands on Amazon. He was one of our first success stories, and we just looked at this, it's like, so by having this training, we should probably get rid of the, look at the 80-20. What's getting us 80% of our results was private label. And then, so when we did that, and now we had these testimonials, you go from the first year launching the product doing $1 million to the next launch we do, just the launch itself in 9 days doing $7 million. It's kind of like, whoa. And then the next launch you did 10, next launch you did 16, then you do a $22 million launch. And it was just, it 2 things happened. Number one, we were the first to market. We were the first real established system. But the other cool thing is all of that pre-training I did of creating communities, courses, all those kind of things just fed right into that. So it was just really all those relationships from affiliates and everything that I had. It was like the perfect storm. And, it plays with your mind too. When all of a sudden all this success comes, it's like winning the lottery. There's a lot of challenges that come with that. A lot of challenges. But no, I was hoping for like a $2 or $3 million launch. I had no idea it would do what it did.
And the biggest launch was the 22 million. Was that the
Yes.
So that's a lot more than one.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible.
But with all the people now that have come in, because obviously you opened up this kind of new frontier, that's an opportunity. When I look at it, sometimes I think in terms of it's almost like learning franchise. As far as saying, hey, there's kind of a turnkey business method here that you can adopt. But franchises, you need a lot of money to be able to engage in. Here, you need very little investment to be able to kind of get a product, get a business, get the whole structure together, and be able to go to market. And then, so if for some reason it didn't work, you don't really have a downside or much of a downside. And if it does work,
it's a terrific thing.
And we actually teach that where some people will, there's one person we were just talking to that put like $16,000 in their first inventory order. And it's like, what are you doing? That's absolutely, you want to start as risk adverse as possible. And the idea is start with this, you want to start with about what, 200-300 units?
That's all you need for really to get going.
Yeah.
You don't need to spend thousands of dollars.
No.
As a matter of fact,
you only started with
$500 worth.
$500.
Got me about 100 bottles of leather conditioner to get going with. But and talking about risk, you're building a business. There's risk involved in it, but I like to think of it as calculated risk.
Yeah.
You don't just go out there and blindly spend money on something you don't feel has a proven way of working out for you. And one of the things that probably the biggest thing we built up is all this credibility, social proof, all these success stories of people who've made it work, and all the reasons why people who didn't weren't able to. So we know what not to do as well as what to do.
Which is really important. It's not just do this, but here, don't do this. It can be the difference between success and failure.
And that's why we have, one of the challenges that we have to keep it up to date all the time. And e-commerce is changing every single day. Amazon changes every single day. You can't open the paper and not read an article about Jeff Bezos or about Amazon without seeing something in the news about them changing or expanding to a new business or shutting down a part of the business.
Right.
We have to stay on top of that, because if we don't, and we teach someone to do something wrong, that could hurt their business big time.
In line with that, because there's a question I have relative to that, because one might think, okay, well, now you've done this for some years now, you've had all these thousands of people who've come in and are doing it. Is it saturated? Is there still a lot of room for people to come in? Where do you think you are in that particular part of the arc?
If you look at it, saturation is a state of mind.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no way that a business or an entire section of the economy that's growing so big could even become saturated yet. Amazon or e-commerce in general only has a fraction percentage of all retail sales. I think it's not even over 15% of all retail yet.
So it's an expanding universe right
Absolutely.
now? Absolutely.
And the way that it's growing, the number of sellers can't even keep up to pace with the way that the amount the market is taking over.
Wow.
And Amazon still does only about 50% in the United States right now. They can still grow there. They're expanding into other markets, other areas, and there's always new products coming out. It's a constant, continual flow of new ideas, new products, new methods of marketing that you can just take advantage of. And, but one thing is, the sooner you get in, the more time you have to take advantage of. That's why we always want people to get in as soon as they can.
And people make the mistake of thinking this is an Amazon business, and it's not. It's a physical products business, but you're leveraging Amazon to get started. And the whole idea is once you have a proven brand, once you have your proven products, and there's so much opportunity on Amazon. Like you said, you can expand internationally so easily. Then you create your own e-commerce store. You start going on different websites, and you expand how your product reaches. But the world's changing. I mean, I was just telling about an article I was reading where it listed all the stores closing this year. People are going to go somewhere to buy. And then people say, well, what if Amazon starts selling all their own products? Well, then would you buy on Amazon? If I only go to Amazon and you can only buy Amazon brand products there, I'd start looking elsewhere.
Right.
Because Amazon doesn't want that. Amazon admits 50% of the revenue is from third-party sellers. So there's so much growth, and it's just like a hockey stick right now with how quick that Amazon is expanding. And some people think that it's oversaturated because I think it's a fear. Like they want to talk themselves out of it, where they're looking for opportunities, but they almost seem to red flag everything. And no matter what business model I've been teaching, that's the number one thing. Oh, is it oversaturated? Is it oversaturated?
They feel like they missed it.
They feel like they missed it. And it doesn't matter that the first year we started selling Amazing Selling Machine, the number one question was, is it too late? Is it too late to get into it? And the only thing that determines success or failure, in my opinion, the number one thing is mindset going into it. And you hear mindset, some people say, oh, it's irrelevant. And it's like, it's not. And every success story we talk to, the people say right away, I knew I could make this work. And so it's really believing that if you're going into this and saying this isn't going to, the word try, I think sometimes people misuse, like, oh, I'm going to try that. Why don't you just do it? Don't just try it. Do it. Implement it. Like fully go in. And it's even incredible sometimes people buy our course and they'll send me their, because they'll be struggling. I'll say, let me see what you've done. And it's like, well, you haven't followed the training. And it's like, well, why are you doing this? Like, is this a hobby for you? Because if it's a hobby, then I'll step back and it's like, you just go have fun. But if you want to change your life, if you want to be a real successful business, then you can't just try. You have to do it. And it's all about mindset. And at the end of the day, there is so much room on the internet for e-commerce. Whether it, Amazon right now is a behemoth, but you remember when Google took over Yahoo, people were like, there's no way like Yahoo's going to be it. And then Google came along, like there'll be something come along. But the thing is, people are always going to need to buy. There's always, whether it be, and I love it now. Like just the other day, I ordered a bottle opener because it's like, oh, I got to go buy a bottle. It's like, wait a sec, order it and same day delivery, you get it, in the big, so it's like, I'm just going to do more and more of that. And I think the world's turning that way. So it's really, if you want to change your life, if you want to do a business, look for the reasons why to do it. Now be cognizant, like obviously if it's, you want to look at the market share and all of those different elements, but at the end of the day, if you want to change your life, you just got to take action and really believe in yourself. I'd say that, Anyway.
Well, in line with that, who's the avatar for you guys? Like this is the ideal person or the ideal 3 types of people that really are our customer?
It started with this guy. With really, and the idea was, because it worked for, mid-40s, middle-aged kind of person that had some disposable income to be able to buy some inventory, not a lot, and they were looking for something else. It was somebody that was stuck in a job, and they were just feeling like, I have to commute to the office. It's really like, the commute could summarize it. Like if you're sick of the commute, but it was more the middle-aged person that was an executive that was looking to get that freedom. But it's since changed a lot.
Yeah, now we see people from all walks of life do it. I mean, I think anyone who wants to make a change in their life and has a reason why they want to do that. And money very seldom is the reason why. It's what you want to do with that money. But if you have a reason, if your why is you want to spend more time with your family, you want to travel, you want to, buy nice things. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Just you understand what it is you're doing this for. If you have a reason why you want to make a change, that's our ideal person. Because having a good reason why you want to make this successful will help you be successful. And I know, like, number one thing that got me successful was as soon as I made the decision that I was going to build this business, I didn't, wonder what's it going to be like when I'm successful. I started visualizing, I've already made the step, I've already made a change. I'm already successful because I've already taken that big leap.
Now you're full-time as an executive when you started, you said, right?
Yeah.
So, because that's one of the big questions that come up. How much time do I need to be able to make this work?
Oh, I was nervous starting out, thinking, how can I build an entire brand and a business while, having 2 young kids at home, having a wife that, she needs attention from me and vice versa. So I couldn't just, ignore all those things, and having a full-time job that I travel to. Luckily, I was able to do it within an hour or 2 a day. So the way that, the training, when I took training to learn how to do this, it was laid out where you could watch it anytime you wanted to. It's online, it's virtual. Support, the help, the mentorship, that's all virtual, online. So anytime you wanted to go watch it, my plan was work all day, came home, I had dinner with the family. Then I would go downstairs and I'd watch some training for an hour or 2. And then I'd come back upstairs and hang out with the family a little bit more. And then 10 o'clock, I would go back downstairs and spend another 30 minutes to kind of plan out my next day. So it's never more than a couple hours a day.
But I think what's important is that you had a kind of a structure around the training. In other words, it's probably not I'll get to it when I have time, because that probably never shows up.
Yeah, those are the people that a year later, we have people from ASM4, they say, okay, now I'm starting. And that was 4 years ago, because you get lifetime access. So once you join, you'll keep getting all the upgrades. And so we'll have people starting now say, now I'm going to commit. And it's like, it's just mind-boggling at times when you hear that, because it's like, why didn't you made this financial investment back then? But it's you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to dedicate. We recommend a minimum of an hour a day. But really, like, if you want to make it work, 2 hours a day is probably more realistic. Like, really, to be able to get it done in 6 months, where if you dedicate 2 hours a day in 6 months, you'll have a dramatic transformation. And you'll know at the end of those 6 months, because that's another thing. One of the things that we believe is that everybody can do this business. Not everybody will want to do a business. You know, a lot of times being an entrepreneur, there's a little bit more responsibility in life because you're more responsible for everything in the business. And so after 6 months, we do occasionally have people that say, no, this just really isn't for me. So we actually offer a guarantee on that, that if you're not, you follow our system, after 6 months, if you're not, you know, if you've done everything and you're not happy, we'll refund you still, because sometimes people fall into that victim. Very, very small percentage of people do that. But it's just an interesting phenomenon because some people, they think that they want to be an entrepreneur, but then they don't.
It's not for them.
It's not for them, yeah.
So another category of person I wonder if this is right for, which is on my mind. So I've got a 22-year-old son who's a senior in college, you know, finance, economics major, who, you know, looking at going out into the job market, saying, I wonder if I, you know, how do I go look for jobs? What am I looking for? But then he just comes back from a trip to London and says, you know, I found a small gin over there that they don't import over here. I wonder if there's a way I can figure out how to import that over here. You're thinking about ways to take products from one place, bring them and, you know, distribute them to another audience. Is someone like that that's like maybe ready for the job market?
Even just the Dysons, like they're 29 years old now, and they're doing what,
$500,000 a month.
$500,000 a month
in sales.
You know, and
$500,000 a month, and these are, so who are these people?
Channing and Justin Dyson.
we just had them in Hawaii for some videos.
Are they college? Like you just out of college, or?
Justin dropped out of college once he realized how well the business was doing.
Right.
And I think that Channing, she now owns a beauty shop that she still does some part-time work in, but now they're really just running their own business, selling all kinds of children's apparel and different types of products that, for them, they have young kids. They realize that, could we make something better? Could we make something that we would want to buy as parents? And knowing that there's hundreds of millions of parents out there, they were similar to what your son was. They wanted to bring something different to the market that they knew there was a demand for, and that gave them their passion to really dig into this business.
One of our early success students, John Gill, who quickly became an 8-figure seller, one of the things that he was most dedicated to us for is how this transformed his family, because he taught his son the business model, and now his son does better than him, and he's like, I feel safe now, like my son is taken care of. So absolutely, and the neat thing about this business is, we recommend that you start, when we teach you, we try to teach you the most effective way to get the fastest results possible with the least amount of risk as possible. Now, there's always some risk. But the reality is, if you only have $100 to start with, you can start with $100. Wow. It's going to take you a little bit longer to find the right products, because some types of products will have minimum order quantities. So you might have to have $1,000 for that product. So keep looking for another product, because the idea is just get started with a product. Find a product on Amazon that fits certain criteria so you know that it's a good seller. And if it's proven on Amazon, that's why we also sell, like if you're just starting out, don't start with a brand new product. Don't say, I have this idea, it's going to do well. Well, if it's not selling on Amazon, you have this whole other hurdle that you're going to have to figure out. So what you do is you find a product that's selling well. First of all, you try to figure out how to make it a little bit better.
There's steps in this process, so is that the first step?
So finding the product's the first step in the process, the most important one, because your product is everything. I like to think of it as the base of the entire business. And that's why we're very, very careful about the criteria we use. We want to make sure that it's priced a certain amount of price, because if it's too low of a price, you won't make enough profit. If it's too high of a price, you can't afford enough inventory.
Right.
You also make sure that the competition is at the right spot on Amazon, because if you have too much competition, you can't compete with people that have unlimited pockets to outspend you. But if there's not enough competition, there's a reason for that. The product probably isn't in demand out there. You also want to make sure that it's not too heavy, because let's face it, shipping is a cost of business nowadays. And if you can remove that from the equation, then that makes it much easier to get going. And then you also want to make sure that you can private label it. That's a big part of what we talk about here. So it's much easier to take a product, a generic product, think of a thermos. Instead of selling the thermos brand thermos, create your own brand of it. Come up with the Mike and Jason's thermos or whatever it is.
Jason and Mike's.
Mike and Jason's. And brand that yourself, because if you own the brand, you own an asset. And you're bringing cash flow every month, and you're building an asset that at some point, if you choose to cash out and retire, you have that built up. If you sell someone else's exact same product, you're building their business.
Right.
But if you make your own, you're building an asset for you.
Yeah, and that's a really important point. A lot of people ask two things, like, why don't I just sell somebody else's brand to start off? Well, with Amazon, you're allowed one listing. So let's say, whatever it is, Acme spatulas. There's only one listing on Amazon, and then you'll see underneath the buy box where you click the buy button, other sellers. So then all of a sudden you'll notice that there could be 50 others competing. So what's happening now, everyone's driving for the lowest price.
Right.
So now it's a commodity product. But when you're your own seller, you're the only listing. You might have Amazon, because it depends on how you have things set up. They can resell your used stuff. So if someone returns something, but that's the only time you'll have a competitor. So it's just, you get all the profit, you get all the sale. And so people think, oh, it's easier to start this way, and it's not.
Do you ever have a manufacturer decide to acquire somebody who was white labeling, saying, hey, you know, this is really good, I like this brand of my product, I think I'll buy you?
So I haven't had that, but I had them want to partner with us and several other people as well. So once they see like your example with your raspberry ketones, where they could have very easily came to you and said, Jason, let's partner on this. We'll give you a better deal. Let's share in the profits. I had one of my suppliers came to me after seeing the growth and wanted to partner on a whole new line with them. They do want to do that sometimes. You don't have to do that. Right. I mean, again, they're really happy being a manufacturer, knowing that they have someone out there who knows what they're doing, selling their products, because that's what they do best. They manufacture, they distribute them to their the third-party sellers, and then let us do what we do best.
They'll stay in their lane. So now, okay, so step one is finding the product. What's step two?
Next one then is, speaking of manufacturers, finding them. And this is what blew my mind when I first learned the business model. I thought that if I was buying any kind of product out there, that whoever made, maybe it was a Rayovac lantern. I thought Rayovac made that product. They had a plant somewhere in St. Louis, and they're churning out lanterns. Ends up there's 100 plants in China all making similar lanterns, and they're private labeling and branding for you. So the first thing is to find a supplier from usually overseas, or if you're selling like a beauty product or some kind of health supplement in the United States, you need to find those suppliers that are looking for you. And I didn't realize you could even do this. I didn't know that was a possibility. I wasn't aware of private labeling at that point in time. But nowadays, you can go online to sites like Alibaba.com, even Google, and search for private label products. And you will see hundreds, not thousands, of different suppliers that actually are looking for you to sell their products for them.
And it's so much easier today with freight forwarders, and a lot. That's a big concern people have. Okay, well, how do I get the product from China to here? It's so easy. It's really just a matter of picking up the phone, talking to the freight forwarder. They ask all the right questions. So I don't even know if all of them need a phone. There's probably online forms now, and they'll make sure it goes from the manufacturer right to Amazon. So it really. We don't recommend this, but you could start and run this business without ever touching the product yourself, ever. Now, we always recommend get a sample, make sure you check the product, but you really don't need to. Yeah,
I don't see any of our products anymore. Not at all.
Well, when we're creating the products, I know for our brands, like we obviously, I'm sure you do this too. You look at the product, you buy the competitors, you compare them, you feel them, you see how you can make it better, and then that's it. And then the only other time is.
Launching a new product.
Yeah. You don't have to have a warehouse or anything.
So that's step two. What's step three?
Step three then is your piece of property or real estate on Amazon. Like Jason mentioned earlier, every product has a listing, we'll call it on Amazon. It's almost like having your own mini website on Amazon. What you want to do is you want to make sure that as many people as possible that go to Amazon, if they see your product, they want to buy their product. And so there's very specific criteria. You want to have the best images possible. You want to have the best title possible to make sure that it gets a lot of traffic, but also doesn't look spammy. Looks like a product that I'd want to buy at the store. You want to make sure that you have plenty of details in the bullet points, those 5 points right below the name of the product. And you want to have a good product description as well. And it's not overly complicated, but there's a formula for making sure you have all 4 of those in place. And there's a fifth one, there's kind of a secret one that most people don't, when you're buying on Amazon, don't realize. Amazon in the back end has these hidden search terms that if you want your product to show up for other searches that aren't in the title or aren't in your listing, you can put them back there too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we had, at one of our live events, we had someone come on stage and be vulnerable because they showed us their product, and we looked at it, audited it. It was actually Mike that did it. He suggested, do this in your back term. The next day, his sales were up 20%.
Wow.
Just by optimizing it right. And one of the things with the...
Did they say thank you, or...
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
They're very successful now, too. They have... and it's really cool how now that with their success, they're paying back. And they're treating in third world countries people with eyesight issues.
Wow.
So it's a very cool story. But with the one thing to keep in mind when you're creating your listing on Amazon is when people can go into a store and touch and feel the product, you have to try to figure out how to give them that experience virtually.
Yeah.
So your pictures have to be, we call them lifestyle images. Think of the person, and a good way to do this is look at your competition, first of all, and see what people are complaining about. And if you can create a picture that negates that, so let's say it's a spatula and someone says, oh, it broke on me. Well, if you had a picture showing them bend it, for example,
Right.
unbreakable. But really, you just want to get in the person's mind, try to get that person able to visually see themselves using the product, and it makes a huge difference. And
Do you use video also to that end?
You can now. Yeah, Amazon has allowed that. Video is obviously super powerful.
Sure.
Yeah.
What's step 4?
The final step is then launching your product. So this is where we can really beat the big brands. You'll think the major brands out there like Nike or Adidas or whoever it is selling on Amazon, you think they'd have these huge marketing departments that are go out there and like do a huge launch on Amazon. To them, Amazon is just another channel, another sales channel. They just put a product up there and they hope that people come buy it because of their popularity. Well, the way that Amazon looks at products nowadays is that there are certain triggers, certain levers you can pull. And if you know what those levers are and those triggers, you can get your product ranking very quickly, usually within a week or two. And it involves, it's not overly complicated either. It involves, getting your product live on a certain date, getting some targeted focused traffic to the product, really focusing on people that you believe are more prone to want your product.
Do you drive that from outside of Amazon or within?
Both.
Both.
Internal
Okay.
and external. I mean, Amazon's investing $15 billion this year in tools for sellers just like us.
Wow.
And those tools allow you to really narrow in on people buying on Amazon based upon their interests, their age, their demographics, the type of products they want. But in addition to that, Facebook makes advertising so easy too. You can also drill down to the demographics to your exact target customer. And once you find that match, you have a product and you have a person that wants that product, that traffic will convert. Wow. And then as soon as Amazon sees the product converting, this is where it's a snowball effect. If someone goes to your product and buys it, Amazon says, wow, this is a popular product. Let's move them up in the search rankings. That happens again, they move up in the search rankings. And if you know how to make those triggers get pulled and activated, it's pretty simple now to rank a product on Amazon within a couple of weeks of launching it.
The big thing, though, the crux of this all is you have to have a good product.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean, and a good product doesn't mean it's the most expensive product, but it's just look at what you're giving the user and make sure you're fulfilling on that. So whether it's a spatula or something much more complicated, just make sure that it's a solid product, because no marketing can help a bad product. You might launch and do really well, but then once the negative reviews come in, you're done. And another tip, too, especially for people wanting to start from scratch, is start with a simple product. Because if you're let's say you want the difference between a spatula and a phone, like any kind of electronic, is one of them is going to give you a headache because you're going to be dealing with all these different departments for manufacturing. You're going to be dealing with reviews because of this electronic part doesn't work. But if you start with something simple, it helps you get going, learn the system, implement it. And then from that point, that's the other thing. You might start with a spatula and end up selling baby supplies.
And that's a really interesting point or a question I have. What's the experience typically when somebody succeeds with a single product? Are they normally then moving to build the next one and the next one, or
sometimes
do people focus
success
on
with
one?
a first product is a curse.
Yeah.
Because people can get, I hate using the word lazy. That's
complacent.
not right. Complacent.
Or they think they're better than they are?
Yeah, that too. That is actually, it's, and we have people with one product doing hundreds of thousands a month. And we keep asking them, when are you going to add your next product? And, they're doing so well with their lifestyle. And it's
They
like,
don't
that's a
wanna bother.
risk.
Yeah.
It's all about calculated risk again.
Yeah.
So there's 3 ways to really grow. You can sell more of that same product. You can launch more products, or you can expand into other markets. And the easiest one is to sell that same product. And people kind of fall into that trap. And it's easy to do because the cash comes in quicker than any other way. But the first step I would do is if you've started a product that there's a demand for, simply expand into that same category. Come up with a complementary product. Instead of a spatula, come up with a fork.
Because I'd have to imagine on a decay curve, if you've got a single product that you've been selling a lot of for some period of time, it's got to
always
decay
a
over
life
time.
cycle. Absolutely.
Yeah,
life cycle.
Yeah.
And sometimes people get lucky. They get a long, long time out of it. But I know all of the products that I started originally selling now are not my top sellers. Some of them we don't even sell anymore. And that's another thing. People seem to make this mental commitment that I have this product, it's going to be forever. And it's like, no, you can't look at that. It's a business you're building, and you want to build, and that's why we say build a brand, because if you've got if it's a spatula, we'll build a brand about that so that you can start relating, build that home improvement brand or the kitchen brand, because then all your communications, you start because you got to build an audience.
Yes.
At the end of the day, and if you're trying to sell a spatula plus, some kind of baby equipment and then some kind of outdoor, you've got this disjointed message. But if you can keep everything within one kind of niche, it's just so much more effective.
Would you say the value then is more in the brand than it is in the product?
Long term.
Absolutely.
Long term.
Long term, because
100%.
now you can launch other products under that brand, and then
Yeah.
you have existing customers that you can convert into the new product.
I can't tell you how many times that we've launched a new product, and before doing any marketing, we start selling them because you have a brand, you have an audience
Yeah.
who trusts you.
Yeah.
And, as long as you have a quality product, you provide stellar customer service, you will build some raving fans out there that'll be advocates for you. I have people who respond to a negative review that are customers of mine even before I get a chance to,
Wow.
because they want to say, hey, have you contacted the company? Did you tell them about your problem? Did you give them a chance to take care of it? 9 times out of 10, they haven't.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see advocates. You build up that camaraderie with your own customers.
You do.
awesome.
Yeah.
So as we're having this conversation, in my own mind, I'm sitting here thinking, I could think of 3 or 4 or 5 different things that this could be kind of fun. And incidentally, this sounds like fun to me. Sometimes I hear things that sounds like work, and of course, effort and work is involved in anything that's going to be successful. But this sounds like kind of fun too. Like I'm getting tickled by some, I wonder if this would work. I wonder if that would work. Different products, different passions, what have you. So what's a proper expectation? Like somebody's watching this, they're saying, hey, this is a whole new universe to me. And it is really a universe of its own, right? I think I got an idea or two. I should start researching, et cetera. What's the right expectation for somebody saying, I'm starting at square one right now? What should I expect as far as outcomes? Of course, you've talked about some pretty extreme examples of successful people, but let's talk typical.
So I mentioned 6 months, and that's kind of how we design the course. The idea is, now you get lifetime access to it, always upgrades, but the course is delivered over 8 weeks. But we realize in 8 weeks, you probably don't even have your product in inventory yet, because the first few weeks is all about finding your product, and then once you order your product, depending on where you get it from, if you get it domestic, within the United States, for example, you could have it in a week. But if you get it from China, sometimes the lead time, depending on the time of year, you could be up to 8 weeks. It could be a couple of months. So really, we figure about 3 months from the time you start to have your inventory, and then the next 3 months launching the product. So that 6 months is really a good time frame. But that means 6 months of working 1 to 2 hours a day.
Right.
And I think that's very realistic. And at the end of those 6 months, no matter what the level of success, you'll know whether this is working for you or not, because you're right, it is fun. And it in a way, it's kind of like the stock market in a way, because you're watching these graphs and you're buying and selling stuff and just watching how it improves. And, it's all the science, the analytics behind it.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I can't tell you how many times that, like, on the weekends when I, get together with family and friends, I'm talking about this business.
Yeah.
It's addictive. It really is. And we talk about it all the time. We do a lot of training, but we still talk about products and ideas and new launch strategies. We're always thinking of something new to help out people to get better results. And then we spend a lot of our own money and time testing things out.
Yeah.
We've wasted a lot of money testing things out, but there's a reason
Invest
for
in
it.
a lot.
Yeah, I was going to
Invest
say, we call it tuition.
Now someone want to realize, after 6 months, what can they expect, financially? The way that we try to narrow in and give people advice on where to start with a product. Don't go for a product that's going to make $1 million a month. Don't go for a product that's going to make you $10 a month. You want something very reasonable and realistic and achievable. So we target products that should get you anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 in revenue a month.
What's the typical margin on that revenue?
25%.
Okay, so that's great.
Yeah, we don't want you going any lower than 25%, because then you've got marketing costs and things, and you want to be able to put money in your pocket. And the other important thing on that too is we recommend give it a full year, and if you're working already, can make your plan to work the whole year, because what you want to do initially when you sell is reinvest 100% everything back into it, because you want to, you're gonna, once it takes off, it's gonna take off. You're gonna run out of inventory. You're gonna be panicking, all these kind of things. But it's like, settle down. That's part of the process. But the thing is, if you're trying to spend all your profit right away, you're not going to be able to reinvest and grow. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But yeah, I'd say that's pretty reasonable.
And the biggest successes we've seen are those people who've taken their profits, they realize potential this business has, and they put it right back in the more inventory. They do that a couple times around, and then they put it into a new product. And then after a year and a half, then you can really make the decision, how much do I want to pull out for myself, for my lifestyle, for my why,
Right.
and then how much do I want to continue putting back in the business so that it continues that steady climb upwards.
Yeah, and it's important to realize this isn't a hack. This isn't a any of those short-term things. You're building a brand. You're building your own physical products brand, and we're teaching you how to do that by leveraging Amazon to explode it. And so you're building a real business. So any business takes time, but if you look at the comparison of trying to start a business anywhere else outside of Amazon compared to on Amazon, it's incredible. It really is.
I have to tell you, what excites me about this is there's so many times I speak to people who want to become entrepreneurs, they're sometimes called wantrepreneurs, right? They'll take some training, they'll learn some things, but there's not really a good path for them to leverage things, tools, Amazon, environments, what have you, where they have the money, the investment that they can make to get something moving, or at least test something to see if it's even viable. So what excites me about this is, like, sure, if I want to open up XYZ franchise, you got $1.5 million, $2 million, and you can get approved for it, et cetera. You can go and get your franchise, and it's a pretty good turnkey business model, et cetera. But in this case, it's like, I don't need, I just need a little bit of capital and some time to get this started to see if I can throw my hat in this ring and get it going.
And a huge component that we're seeing exploding right now is selling businesses. So the Amazon, there are so many people looking to buy Amazon businesses that we're having, 4 or 5 time multiples easy of people who are getting, high 8-figure buyouts of a business that they started on $1,000 because they've created this
only a
brand.
year or two ago.
Yeah, and they're only selling on Amazon.
Well, see, now that's even more fascinating then, because, and I think a huge benefit, because it's one thing to say, hey, I'm able to build a cash flow business, means I get to make some money over time that I can pull out of it. But if you're saying that you're also building an asset that's saleable, that's extraordinarily attractive,
Big time.
especially because if you got some good history and financials, you can get good multiples on a business like that. Yeah.
And so what I'm doing right now personally with my physical products brand, I don't take any money out of it. I focus it all 100% back in, because my plan is in 3 to 5 years, I want to sell it for cash out so that it helps me my next phase of life. So,
Right. And that's maybe I'll call it a real business versus a lifestyle business.
Correct.
And there's nothing wrong with either. It's not, lifestyle businesses aren't bad, but if you're really looking to be a business builder, then on the tax side, I guess you're paying capital gains on that as compared to regular income when you make that transaction. So there's a whole bunch of benefits to that.
The great thing about this too is you don't have to make the decision right away.
Right.
You don't have to go in wanting either cash flow or lifestyle or a combination of both. You can decide that as you get into the business. We do know a lot of people who want the lifestyle business.
Right.
They're okay making an extra couple $1,000s a month in pure income, so they can travel, they can pay their house payments, they
Right.
can get an extra car. And in order to maintain that type of lifestyle business, you can keep going just on a couple hours a week.
Wow.
Once you have your product up and selling, it's really just keeping track of customer questions and making sure inventory is in stock. If you want to grow it and turn it into a brand that you want to sell as an asset, you have to put more time into it.
Yeah.
It's a real business.
Yeah.
That's what I love about it. It's a real business. You can have both components.
and I just one caveat I want to add there. So, for example, right now I work 90 minutes a week on my Amazon business. That's it, because I have employees. Now, you can't do that. I don't want someone listening to this say, oh, I can work just a couple hours a week. Well, no. You'll get to that point. When you start, you have to invest the time. You have to get things in place. You have to then get the employees involved. But then it gets to a point, you're right, that's all you have to do is a couple hours a week. It's always wise to know what's going on in your business, but it's one of those things you can set up, hire outsourcers, employees, family, whatever you want. It's very doable.
That's awesome. You guys have a new book that you've written on this subject. And just for bragging purposes, thank you for your generosity, because we're able to offer this as a bonus for people
welcome.
who invest in Money Revealed. So we're excited to offer this, but I'd like you to tell them about the book rather than me.
Sure. This is the first time we've actually done this. We've created a book that, it talks a lot about what we talked about today, the basic training, how to start your own Amazon business, but it goes into much more detail. We'll go through all the exact steps, all the pitfalls to look for, the ways to, other tricks and tips that we've learned over the years. We don't always teach tricks and tips, but we've included them in this book because we know these are little things that'll help you go along, get going faster, even better. We've included that all in the book. Everyone's going to get that for free, and it'll walk through the entire process of finding the product, finding a supplier, creating that perfect product listing on Amazon, and then launching it so you can start making sales immediately, all in one book that you'll get shipped to you.
This has been a wealth of information, so to see it consolidated in a book plus more, I think is really, really useful. It's the kind of thing that I'd like to say, let me, this is drinking from a fire hose here. Let me slow down and kind of read the book in increments over time. So thank you very much for offering this to the Money Revealed audience. I know they'll greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Well, I have to say this has been a really great peek into a universe of real potential for people that maybe don't have other paths open to them. So your enthusiasm is palpable. So I appreciate you coming here and sharing it so openly. So thank you very much for this time.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure to be here.
Have you ever heard the terms network marketing, multi-level marketing, direct marketing? They're all describing the same thing. And I have to tell you, quite frankly, my partner Jeff and I wrestled with, do we want to include this in the Money series? Because there is sort of a tinge around the concept of what this is and what it does in the world. And once we had met Justin Harrison, the next interview you're going to see, it completely enlightened us in very exciting ways about what the possibilities are in this world that's known as today direct marketing. There's a lot to learn here. I'm very excited about the possibilities that it holds for millions and millions of people around the world, and I believe it can hold some possibilities for you too. So enjoy my interview with Justin Harrison. So Justin, thanks for sitting with us. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
You're welcome. Me too.
So what's your story? How did you get involved in what you're doing today?
So as a college student, way back in, early 90s, attending Utah State University up in northern Utah. And like most college students, we are living on mac and cheese and spaghetti and ramen noodles and, the cheapest things that you can possibly buy to subsist, right? And so I answered an ad. Of course, I didn't have a job at the time, and answered an ad in the newspaper and went in for a job interview. I thought it was a job interview, and it was of sorts, but it was a whole different concept for me, and it was the concept of leveraging your income not just on you, 100% of you, but on small percent of hundreds or thousands of other people. And that was my introduction to direct sales, right? I had no clue. I like to tell people I was a networking virgin. I had no idea at all what it was about or how it worked.
And the monikers are direct sales, multi-level marketing, and
Network
marketing.
Kind of all the same
thing,
animal, right? And so that was my introduction, and then started to work with that company. And that was, a few decades ago now.
So did you think when you showed up for that interview that this was going to be a multi-decade career?
No. Oh, no. Again, I was just looking for some way to eat something better than mac and cheese.
I guess it worked. Are you eating better mac and cheese today?
Yes, yeah. Still love mac and cheese, though. It's fine. And my kids love it. So.
That conversation's a different special.
That's right. Different story.
Different story. So what were your activities? You went in, you went for this interview, which I guess was their basic introduction to recruit you.
Sure.
And what type of product was it, and what did you do?
Well, back then, and this company is not here anymore, right? It's not around, and there's a story there if we want to go into it. But at that time, it was primarily nutritionals, water filtration, that type of thing. Stuff that I really didn't know anything about, but quickly learned about, became very passionate about it, became my own best customer, right?
And how key is that? Is that you're passionate about whatever the product is that you might be doing in a network marketing standpoint?
It's critical. It's the first step.
Right.
The very, very first step that we teach is that you have to be your own best customer, because people can tell. Like that lack of sincerity, or if you're not genuine, it's like if you went to go buy a car and you went to a Ford dealership and you buy a Ford, and I have, Fords are great, Chevys are great. I'm not, going to choose sides. Right. But if you went to buy a Ford and then you see your car salesman drive off in a Chevy,
right,
you would be a little bit, that doesn't add up, right? It's the same. You have to be your own best consumer of your product, just to represent the brand and really believe it.
Now, so you did this while you were in college?
I did.
Did you finish college?
I didn't.
Wow, because this went so well?
Yes. I didn't. I continued for a while, and then I eventually dropped out to just pursue this full time, because it was taking everything I had. Wow. And just going.
So what were your activities in the beginning? So you show up, they say, hey, we got these very nutritional and health related products, water filters. You became passionate about it. You liked the story, obviously, that you heard. So what did you do? How did you build this business to a point where you felt comfortable leaving college?
So it's all word of mouth. right? That's the great thing about direct sales. Like, you don't see the billboards and the commercials and all of that millions of dollars put into advertising traditionally, right? Which still goes on. It's all word of mouth. So it was just networking. Who knows who. And of course, the majority of the people say no, which is totally fine because it's not for everyone. We're not looking for everyone. But when you do get those yeses, and they fall in love with the product. The great thing about someone becoming a product evangelist is what I like to call it. Like, they just love it.
Right.
Is they share naturally. So if you love, here we are making a movie, right? If you go see a movie, pick one of your last favorite movies that you've went and seen, you tell everybody, oh, it was so good. You got to go see this. It was amazing. The acting, the storyline, it was amazing. Well, you're not getting paid for that directly, right? The studio is, the actors are, they're all getting compensated, but you're out promoting it for free because it was so good. And it works the other way too. If we go to a bad restaurant and the food's terrible, we tell everybody, oh, don't go there.
Right.
Don't eat there. No. It's not worth the money. Don't go. So it works in reverse also. But it's word of mouth is the most powerful form of advertising that there is. And now with social media, because that is word of mouth, right? That message can even reach so much further than before.
So you then started word of mouth talking to people saying, hey, this stuff is great, et cetera. And how long did it take before you started realizing some income?
It was a while. It was probably a good year, before it really started to
So you had to be passionate. If you're doing something for a year, you're not really making any money at it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you do. You have to really have that vision of where it's going to go. And you surround yourself with people that have done it, and coaches that have done it, trainers that have been successful in doing it. So it's helpful.
So once you've done that, and now a year goes by, what clicked? What started what got the flywheel spinning?
When you start to see the team members you're working with, the other people, and they're pursuing their goal, that's when the magic starts to kick in, right? It's like no longer about you. Now the focus is on them and helping them be successful because you can't be without them, right? And that is where the flywheel starts to run.
No, so I think when you're using the term team members, you're talking about other people that are recruited under you who are in the system and you're selling the same products. So once they're in, did you have to convince them to leave other jobs, or did they, kind of do this part time, or how does that work?
That's a great question. I actually told people at times to go and get their job back.
Wow.
Because they quit too soon. We are very much about should begin as a supplemental income, right, or a part-time income. And then as it grows and gets to where it can replace your income, that's great. Then you can have that discussion, right? Of like, do I want to, get rid of the full-time gig and just focus on this? And then we even encourage people, well, what if you kept both for a time, right? Get out of debt, because most people are in debt, right? Let that dig you out faster. Then you can kiss, the full-time job goodbye and just focus on your business. It's a totally personal decision too. But I've had people get started and, in their second week quit their job, and I'll be like, can you get it back? Because what I don't want that person going into survival mode. Because it takes time, right, to get going, and if they make that leap too soon, it could be really ugly. And then on the other side, I had a good friend that he was making a significant income with our company, and we needed him to quit his job, but he loved his job, and we had to kind of have an intervention. It was like, we really need you here, and we know you love that there, but we know you're making much better income here, and it's just time.
What kind of money can people make doing this type of work?
Oh gosh, direct sales is like the great equalizer. It doesn't discriminate based on gender, race, ethnicity. It is truly a meritocracy, right? You're paid based on merit, right? And so you can generate supplemental income. A lot of people, I would say, I know in our company now, doTERRA, 84% of our 7 million members are consumers, right? They're customers.
Right.
They just use the product. They don't sell the product. they're not expecting to earn any money, right? Because they're not in the business.
So they would sign up though because they get a discount on the product.
Sure, they sign up as a wholesale customer, right? So they're a customer, but they're not a distributor. They're not a vendor, right? So they actually cannot sell the product.
So they declare.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not like saying, hey, I'm going to pretend to be a distributor, but I
Right.
just want to get it for myself.
Yeah, they can't enroll other people. They can't. They would have to upgrade their account or transition their account to be. We call it a wellness advocate in the industry. It's a distributor usually, and then they could start to sell if they wanted to. And so the majority of people that get started, it's first just to get enough for their product paid for. They're happy if they're spending $100 or $200 a month on product that they love, if they can earn that as well. So it's just a wash, nothing coming out of the family budget. They're happy, right? That's a huge majority. And then there are those that earn a part-time income and full-time. And then for my friends in New Jersey, where you're from, and they love it when I say this because I travel there often, you can even earn gangsta money.
I'm an Italian from New Jersey.
So I know. I said that in New Jersey once, and they talked about it for like 5 years. It was hilarious. You can earn gangsta money. I'm like, yeah.
So let's talk about gangsta money. What are we talking about here?
Oh, I love it. You went into New Jersey accent.
Yeah, go right into it. So let's start with part-timers. And I know that it's a range, but for people who are watching us right now and saying, I need to supplement my income, or we're married, but we're a one-income household, and there's a second, maybe my spouse would like to maybe do something part-time and generate some additional income into something that might be he or she might care about.
Sure.
So when you start on the part-time basis and you start to get some traction, what kind of part-time income can people make? I know that every company would be different, but let's talk about doTERRA. Let's talk about in your company.
Sure. So we've done a lot of research on this, right? And looking at the numbers and the data and analyzing everything, every direction, right? And we've seen that the sweet spot for a part-time person is if they can commit. If you could commit to me, we're going to use you as an example. If you could commit to me that you could give me a good 10 to 15 hours a week, right, to put into this side hustle. Right? We live in the gig economy, where meaning not gig as in gigabytes. That's what people think. Meaning everybody has a side gig, right? Thank you, Uber.
Yeah.
And so it used to be in when I was younger that if you were moonlighting, that was a bad thing. Right. That was frowned upon. If your employer found out you were doing something on the side, that was not good. So you kept it quiet. Well, now that's totally switched. Right. And now we're in the gig economy where most people have something on the side,
right?
And or some things, several things even, and it's not frowned upon at all. And so it's here we are in this side economy. So if this is going to be your side hustle, then 10 to 15 hours a week is what I'm going to ask of you. And you're going to generate. Obviously, it takes time, but this is the beautiful thing about direct sales and about network marketing. As you invest and as the team grows, it becomes a residual. And so if you're going to put in 10 to 15 hours a week and a year from now you're earning a residual of $500 a month or $700 or whatever it is, that continues to come in. Even if, say, next month something happens, you got to go take care of your mom, for the month or whatever it is, that still comes in. Even though you may not have been as involved that month as you were prior, right? And so that's what got me, that was a concept that got me in the very, very beginning, was that earning a small amount off the efforts of many versus 100% of just me.
Right.
Because where I live now, my neighbors are all surgeons and doctors and phenomenal people. I love them. But my neighbor, if he doesn't do surgery today, he doesn't get paid.
Right.
Right, he's got to be anxiously engaged, and he's paid well. Don't get me wrong, but he's got to be in the surgery room, doing his doctorly duties. And so, I don't have to be at the office that day or at work that day to still get paid.
It's interesting as you use that as an example is the surgeon still had to invest many, many years of not getting paid in order to be able to do that first surgery.
Sure.
And in this particular situation, whether it's side hustle or full time, you got to invest a good amount of time before you
Yes.
start getting paid. But that's an investment of time to build
Yeah.
something. But the difference is, as you said, once that's kind of built up, it's sort of this recurring
Yeah.
revenue as compared to transactional every time you do something.
Right, and it's kind of like on-the-job training. Like, you're gonna learn. There's I mean, it is not. We have this saying that if you're ever through learning, you're through.
Right.
Right, because I've been working in this profession for, 20 some years, 22 years, 24 years, something like that. And with doTERRA full time for the last 10 years since it started, and I'm still learning.
Yeah.
Right, I'm still learning and investing in myself and in my team members and my people, and we as a community are what moves it all forward.
So getting back then to the the income potential for somebody who's doing this part-time, say 15 hours a week. What are the ranges there? So somebody say, I'm trying to size something up. I'm looking. I'd like to set up something, at least start on the side. Maybe I'd go full-time at some point. But they'd want to be able to gauge, is this something that's practical for me?
Yeah. So the ranges are going to be anywhere from a few $100s to a few $1,000s
Per month.
Just depending per month, yeah. Just depending on the size of the team that's built, right? The number of customers that are there that are purchasing. Size does matter when it comes to direct sales, because oftentimes we'll have someone achieve a new title or a new rank, and maybe two people achieve the same title. But if one of them has a team that's doing 100,000 in sales and the other one has a team that's doing $500,000 in sales, well, guess who's going to get paid more?
Right.
It's obvious, right?
Meritocracy.
Right. Even though they're the same title and the
Right.
same position, this person has a much larger organization, so they're going to have a bigger check, right? A bigger income.
And then full-time, if somebody said, okay, I'm doing this full-time, I mean, there's people, I guess, on the very top end of the scale that have seven-figure incomes.
Oh, yeah. We have, there's this magical number, and I've guilty. When we first got started in doTERRA, my wife and I had this idea in my head that if I could just make $10,000 a month, okay, $10,000 a month. And as I've observed in society, that is a magical number for most people in their minds, because they're accustomed to making 2 or 3 or maybe 4, 5. Most people aren't getting above that. So when you talk about $10,000 a month, it's just like, but to me, when we got started, $10,000 a month, I was like, oh, that's like Robin Leach lifestyles of the rich and famous, and I was like, wow, that would just be like, everything is covered, life is amazing. And then you get to that point and you discover that that's not true. That there actually is much more beyond that, and that you can do more. And money is not the root of all evil, right? Actually, money is a magnifier of character, right? It's a magnifier of character. It makes you more of who you are. So if you're a good, kind, giving, loving person before, you're going to be more of that, right? If you're a negative, sorry, bottom dweller, you might be more of that, right? And so it just magnifies your character. But when we take these people and we get them to that 10 grand level, it is life changing.
Yeah.
I mean, it truly is. But then their vision opens. What does 20 look like? What does 50 look like? What does 100 look like? And beyond, right? And beyond that. So it's pretty incredible.
That is fascinating, because I think, one of the things I find really interesting or attractive about direct sales and a meritocracy, as you describe it, is that there's no cap. It's not like, there's not like somebody say, oh, you've reached the pinnacle and this is as good as it gets. You can always have ambition and go further.
Yeah, there's no cap.
And that's one of the things I think is really interesting. So if you were to look at network marketing compared to other forms of careers that somebody might engage in, what would you say that the main characteristics are in this career as compared to others?
Well, speaking of entrepreneurship, right? Because you are an entrepreneur if you're doing this. The startup costs are very low, right? Very, very low. Generally, most companies charge some kind of membership fee to get started. Ours is $35, and that lets you get going.
So, instead of like, I want to become a franchise owner, you need
Right.
a lot of money to do that.
Right.
Yeah, I want to do real estate. Well, you need some capital to invest.
Right.
But here, it's sweat equity that you have to put in, I guess, to get started.
Right.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah, I mean, really, bare minimum to me, you pay your membership fee, whatever that is. You do need to have some personal experience with the product. That doesn't mean you buy a garage full of product.
Right.
Absolutely not. Get some for you,
Yeah.
for your family.
Right.
Whether that's $50 or $100 or a few hundred, whatever it is, whatever works, just so you can have, because again, you can't go out without that belief in the product yourself, right? Or people can just tell.
Right.
And so the startup costs are very, very low. The time commitment generally, most traditional businesses, brick and mortar, you're not going to see any kind of profit for years.
Right.
Right? It's all back in, all back in, all back in. You do reinvest in this business as well, but the return is so much faster.
Where's the reinvestment come?
Typically, you'll have travel. You're going to go out and meet with people, and you can do a lot of this online now, which is great with things like Zoom and Skype and all that stuff. But you will have some travel. You're going to have some typical business expenses. You also have the benefit of being a home-based business, right? So you get all the tax benefits there. We've had people join our company just for the write-offs. Right? I want to write off my home office. I want to write off my cell phone bill. I'm going to write off because they're now in a home-based business, right? And I'm not an accountant. Talk to yours, right, about how that works. But there's a lot of benefit there as well. So low cost of entry, tax benefits. The biggest benefit to me is this magical word called duplication. And I have 8 children, so we've duplicated. It's not that kind of duplication. Duplication is when...
Can I just...
yeah.
Not only do you have 8 children, you have 8 boys.
We have 8 boys.
So you...
And my wife, I'm pretty sure she should just get a free pass into heaven.
Yeah. Do you at least have a female dog in the house? We
don't.
Oh my gosh.
We don't. We don't. It's really, our first 3 children, we didn't have a gender check of any kind because we just wanted the surprise, right? Yeah. And then after the first 3 boys, it was like, okay, well, certainly there's going to be a girl. We better do gender checking so we can prepare. Right. Boy. And you know what? We love it.
And with 8 kids, I guess that's where, at some point, that's where you start to say, geez, that $10,000 a month, maybe we got to think bigger.
Exactly.
You create a need.
But yes, this profession has allowed my wife and I to even have that option, right? To even be able to do that. And we feel passionate that it's okay, and not only okay, that it's awesome to be able to say, it's all right to have a big family, right? And to let that be visible.
With your big family, with all these boys, are you going to encourage them, or at least introduce them to network marketing as a potential career?
Totally. My oldest son's already in.
Okay.
Well, he's the only one old enough to be.
He's 18?
He's 18, yeah. Yeah, you do have to be 18 years old because you have to be of legal age to enter a contract, right?
Right.
So you do have to be 18, and he's got a nice little business going. But and the others, it's interesting because they see Dad work at home and they see Dad travel, but then they also see Dad just be home a lot. Right. And sometimes I think they maybe wonder if I work. And so my wife and I have had serious conversations about they need to actually see you working,
right?
So that they know that you have to put in effort,
right,
to make this happen. So we're very conscious of that and very aware of it.
What's the characteristics of somebody who would succeed in network marketing? I imagine it'd have to be like good storytellers. For one, but what other characteristics?
Yeah, good storytelling is great. It's not required though, because really, if people are persistent, that's got to be up there, and consistent over time. Dave Ramsey, I don't know if you've probably heard of Dave Ramsey. Of course. He has a formula that we've adopted that is so true, and it's focused intensity over time, multiplied by God. Equals massive success, and it's so spot on, so spot on. So having that drive, having the passion, being genuine, being authentic. You're not going to stalk people. You're not going to Facebook spam people. You don't do any of that stuff. Our profession has a historical negativity associated with it, right? Because in the past, it's been deserved. In the past, there's been some bad eggs and some bad companies and quite honestly some bad people. that have given the profession a black eye, right? In the past, 80s and 90s, and we've evolved out of that. I don't think we're on trial anymore. It's become very accepted, very common. Again, in the side hustle economy, very welcomed as we've moved out of that stereotype of the past.
So let's talk about the economics of this a little bit and just some of the numbers, because I don't know that people really understand how massive this industry is. And it's interesting. I like the fact that you characterize it as a profession, not just an industry, right? I picked up on that.
Awesome.
Yeah, so you're saying, hey, you're a professional. This is a profession. It's not just some kind of an industry here. It means that there's people who lead it. So let's start worldwide. As far as the amount of people who are literally engaged, not as customers, but as distributors, as people who earn some income from this, how many people do this worldwide?
It's based on 2017 numbers, it's approximately 118 million.
Wow. 118 million people, so that's roughly over a third of the United States, if you just want to look at it from a population.
And that's just people that are distributing the product, selling the product, right? That's not including, like in our case, over 80% of our members are customers, right? So they would not be included in that figure.
Right, yeah.
So that's just the
This is
people that
people
are selling.
actually deriving an income.
Yeah.
And then in the United States, what does that translate into?
About 10%, about 18 million.
18 million people. Just in the United States.
Just the United States.
And what's also interesting is that I think, I might have thought before I heard these numbers that this is sort of a North American centric type of a thing. The rest of the world doesn't really embrace it. This is something, and like Asia, especially in other markets, it's only 10% are here. 90% are offshore.
Right. The Asian countries are actually the most aggressive and most dominant when it comes to our profession.
Wow.
China leading the way.
Wow.
Right? China, Japan, Korea. But here in the U.S., Mexico's in the top 10, Germany's in the top 10.
Oh, wow.
The U.S. is obviously in the top 10. Right. And so we've got, our share as well.
Yeah.
It seems like most of the direct sales companies start in the U.S., then migrate to Asia, where they really go big, right? In fact, most of them that exist here in the U.S. without Asia wouldn't exist, right? Our case has been the opposite. We actually have taken the title of the largest direct sales company in the United States.
doTERRA is?
Yes.
Wow.
If you look at just U.S. sales only, right, take out all the international stuff. So doTERRA, in only 10 years, we're only 10 years old.
Wow.
Right? And we've taken the number one spot. And then we're in the top 10 globally, but all the other 9 are more than double our age. And so we're pretty excited about
your
our
trajectory is pretty good.
Yeah.
So you said there's 7 million total people in doTERRA that are distributor or customers, but all in that group. What number are you in that line?
So my wife and I were the very first.
So you're number one.
We were, yeah.
So underneath you are 7 million.
Yeah.
Wow.
Give or take
Yeah,
a few thousand.
Rounding error.
And so sometimes we get asked, how do you manage 7 million people? And my response is always, I don't.
I don't, right?
I don't. There is a few dozen key people that we work with very closely and on a regular basis. And then we are blessed with amazing leaders throughout our organization that run their teams, and they're independent of us. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
So it begs the question, is it good to be king?
Sometimes.
It's a package deal, isn't it?
You're not just king. Sometimes you're chief janitor in charge of cleanup.
So you were there in the beginning 10 years ago.
Yes.
Wow. So this is interesting to me, and I think to anybody who's watching, what the experience is of saying 10 years ago, I got involved in something, and I was the very first distributor. So my role in this was to start this thing, and here we are 10 years later, and we really built something in the world that's pretty spectacular in scope and impact. I guess I'll ask the question I did about your college days. Did you think this was going to unfold this way?
No. I mean, we did know because of our product, because of the essential oils, we knew that it would be big, right? We knew that they change lives, they help people on a health level that is phenomenal. So we knew it would be successful. We really did. We knew we had a quality that was better than anything else out there. So success, yes, we knew that. To this level, I don't think that really any of us foresaw where this is going and where it's continuing to go over the next 10 years.
Right.
And so it's an amazing journey. I do want to point out one thing you touched on. Yes, my wife and I were the very first members of doTERRA. However, because there's a misperception out there, oh, you got in first, right? You got in first, so of course you're making big money.
Right.
Okay, we have many team members that out-earn us. Many that came years later.
Right.
Right? And so that notion that you've got to get in first to make all the money is wrong. In fact, I would say often the opportunity is even better later. Because when we got started, we had nothing.
Right.
We had to make up everything. There was no website. We were still sending things in via fax machine.
Right.
For those of you that don't know what that is, look that up. Right? I mean, there was no tools, no product guide, no video. I mean, nothing. We were lucky to have a product.
Right.
And now there's everything you could dream of having on a buffet right in front of you to start your business, which is another strategic advantage, kind of like in a franchise model where they've figured out the system.
Right.
This is our system. Now pay us a bunch of money for the system, right? And we'll give it to you. Well, in our model, we have the system. Oh, and here it is. Right.
And that's a huge distinction is that, rather than trying to be entrepreneurial and start something from scratch on your own, which is, pretty high risk and pretty tough and usually requires a lot of investment, it's saying, hey, this has all been figured out and the buy-in is very, very low. And but you have a system, that you can build off, that you can leverage off of. And that's kind of the hybrid because you're in your own business, right? But you don't have all the risk that comes with traditionally being in your own business.
Totally.
Yes.
Totally. Excellent point. Yeah. And this system was created by taking all of the field, well, not all, because that wouldn't be manageable, but many of the key field leaders that have been out doing this for years successfully, putting them all in a room. That was a challenge. And over the course of years, hammering this out, simplifying it down, because human nature is to complicate things, not to make them simple. And so making things simple is actually harder than it sounds. But we did it and got it narrowed down to like, this is what you do. Done.
So also each of these people, I guess, who were, the bigger people in the network marketing scale, like you said, okay, I'm number one, but there's people who out-earn me. That's because they're, even down the line, you build, your closest people to you. I imagine that your job now becomes training, motivating, and that type of thing, as compared to you doing the selling. It's you're creating a sales team under you, if you will, that's going out and doing it.
Oh yeah.
And if you could do that, and that's like, hey, that's its own little business right there. With these people are attached to, I imagine, the person as much as they are to the company. Is that kind of a dynamic in this world?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, people do become very connected to the culture of their team, right? And culture really trumps everything, right? One thing that a lot of people that have come to our company will comment that it's the culture that attracted them to us, even over the product. And some people are like, oh no, they come for the product. Well, yes, of course, but it's the culture that kept them there. And what is that culture? Of being of integrity. We're debt-free. We practice what we preach. We don't have a penny of debt in our company, in the corporation, right? And just the whole ball of wax of being family-focused. And we actually want to be known as the company responsible for helping the most people get out of debt of any other company on the planet, right? We don't promote... the network marketing of the 80s and 90s was all bling bling lifestyle, big checks, big cars, big mansions,
Here's my
big
picture
boats.
in front of the
boat.
Or
and people are going and faking those photographs and staging them, and they're fake it till you make it.
Right.
Oh, gag me with a fork. So all of that was the 80s and 90 model, and that attracted people back then. Today it's a turnoff, right? Today it's you can't do that. You'll go out of business, right? Because that's not what people are looking for today, right? They want to get their student loans paid off.
Right.
Right? They want to get a little money in the bank. So that's our focus, right? Let's get your debt out. And then, yeah, you can buy a nice car after you're out of debt, right? Not before.
So this is really interesting because I think a part of the outside perception of direct sales and these cultures, or these communities rather, has nothing to do with culture. If somebody said, okay, what's one of the number one things that you think is a characteristic of a network marketing community, culture wouldn't be the thing that would pop into my head. But as you're saying it, I'm realizing that, and maybe it's not true for all companies, but in your company, saying, we have a particular culture. There's literally values. The values are known. One of them maybe being debt-free is what I'm hearing. So I'm listening for values as you're saying them. And that we build a culture of people who really want to embrace this and want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And I have to imagine, and tell me if this is right or wrong, that there's a synergy that starts to develop because of that culture.
Yeah, absolutely there is. Another part of that culture that creates that synergy is cause, right? People are more, especially in the millennial generation, right? Cause matters, right? Almost more than anything else. And so we've really embraced that in our sourcing models for our products and how we acquire the product, how we go direct to the growers of these little farmers, often in third world countries, that are making nothing for an income and going in and tripling, quadrupling, even 10 times what they were making if they'll work directly with us and just changing their lives and going on these, we call them co-impact sourcing trips where we go in and actually see with our own eyes how all of this is done. And the families, like we went into Haiti, right? One of the poorest nations in the world, where we source one of our essential oils. And we employ over 5,000 farmers.
Wow.
5,000 independent farmers harvesting for one of our essentials and their families. And so that's 5,000 families affected for just one essential oil, but in the poorest country in the world.
Yeah, that's impact.
And so that culture, I mean, especially again with that millennial generation, which is the up and coming, leaders of our nation and our communities, that matters, right?
Yeah, it's a far cry from standing in front of your Learjet.
Totally.
Yeah, that image of poor farmers, now supporting their families is something that is more compelling.
Yeah, when I can hold up that little bottle of essential oil and say, there's way more than just a drop of oil, right? This has a story behind it, right? This has a community behind it. And that little bottle represents the employment of literally thousands of people. We actually had a number given to us at our last big global convention of just shy of 100,000 families globally being employed in our sourcing efforts.
Just on the sourcing side.
Just on the sourcing side, yeah. Not even like at the corporation, all that stuff. No. Just on the sourcing side, almost 100,000 all over the planet, and often in developing countries. And so it's a big thing. Crazy.
It's interesting because now you're bringing this humanitarian complexion to this idea of network marketing, and understanding that there's ripple effects in a lot of aspects of it. And I guess once you're inside, this is what's discussed. This is the attractive factors for people to say, I think I could find some purpose in this and feel good about it. Not just it goes well beyond side hustle, right? It goes into now saying maybe there's a spiritual component to this that can enrich my life.
It's so true. Our health, to me, you can divide up your health into 5 areas. You have physical, obviously, right? Emotional, financial, mental, spiritual. Yeah. And all of those, if any one of them are out, right, and any one of them easily can be, then it affects the whole, right? And so really identifying all of those and being aware, that's the first thing, and being healthy in all of them. And the financial one is where so many people get tripped up, right? Because it's hard to be spiritual. Yeah. When you're drowning in debt even. It's hard to have positive emotional outlook when you can't pay your rent. Right. It's just there's so many of these things. So if we can remove that component and then focus on a culture of healing, all of those areas, and going in and changing people's lives with what we're offering them. It's an amazing journey.
So this is fascinating because before we sat down, this was not at all the conversation I thought we'd be having. which is what makes this
You wanted
great.
to talk about houses and cars and boats?
I didn't know exactly where we'd go. That's kind of the magic of this, is that there's a lot of preconceived notions, obviously not just around network marketing, but around all types of things. Whether anything that has to do with money, there's always this sort of baggage that comes
Stigma.
along with
Yeah.
it, and it comes a lot of times through episodes, like you said. Hey, there was the dark ages of network marketing, in the 80s and 90s,
Totally.
right? And those things sort of linger. And now I'm sitting here saying, wow, this is sort of this really enlightened view of how human beings can exist, how they can earn a living, how they can be enriched in multiple dimensions of their experience, not one, and that's what makes it work great.
Totally.
It's amazing how this all can unfold.
It absolutely is. It's really exciting because we're just, we're only going to grow as a profession. And I appreciate that you picked up on that word choice, because that's a conscious decision that we and leaders in our profession, and not just our company, but many, many companies, have consciously made the effort to change the terminology from industry to profession.
Right.
So because then you will act professional.
Yes.
And we are, and we want that image, and that is, so I appreciate that. That's been very rewarding for me.
Anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur that doesn't come from a wealthy family, or maybe they come from a wealthy family, but their family's not funding them, but they're typically, there's a risk involved. And what do we all know? We know that the odds of success are very low, but entrepreneurs don't agree with those odds or don't believe in them. They see something that they want to do and they go after it. That's what makes them entrepreneurs. But there's maybe a strategy that says, I should build some kind of a residual income that is kind of steady, so that this can support me or my basic lifestyle while I go take a risk on something else. Do you find those kinds of people coming into network marketing?
Totally. Yeah. Entrepreneurs are people who work 80 hours a week for themselves before they'll work 40 hours a week for someone else. Right? That's my definition.
That's
of
a
an
great.
entrepreneur,
I never heard it before, and I love that definition.
Because we will, right?
Yeah.
We will kill ourselves working for ourselves
before
I will have to go and work for someone else, because that's just in our genes. And actually, so in the book, Why Smart People Can Be So Stupid.
I love that. I've never heard the book, but I love the title.
I know. It's a great title, right? There is a quote, or there's a study in there that they talk about how in Western civilization, Western society, that we are only 50% of the population is cognitively hardwired to be an entrepreneur. So only half of us.
Right.
And the other half of us were just not programmed that way. Right. And so we have to be mindful of that as we're out working with entrepreneurs, because I might be talking with someone that is just employee mindset. Right. And they're not going to do anything unless you tell them what to do, unless you play that, boss role and give them. And so we are looking for the entrepreneurs that will take it and run. And coming back to your question, if you'll build a residual income, something that keeps coming and keeps coming and keeps coming, because you're offering a product that people reorder. Right. We're blessed because we have an over 70% retention rate. Wow. Which no one else has in our profession that I'm aware of. The norm in our profession is 20%. Wow. So that means you keep 2 out of 10 people continue to order, right? Which to me, I would just die if that was the case, because I'm used to 7 out of 10, right? Which is awesome as a business model, because if I'm going to go through the efforts to acquire a customer, I would like to keep them rather than have to just keep churning in more and more people. And so that retention rate is critical to building your residual. But the beautiful thing as an entrepreneur, as you know, one of the laws of success, financial success, is you don't keep all your eggs in one basket. Right. Because life happens, right? And if all your money's in the stock market and it tanks, well, that's going to be painful. If all your money's in real estate and it tanks, that's going to be painful. So you want a little bit in everything, right? You want to diversify your assets and your investments and your businesses. So what this really empowers you to do is to actually do that. So you have your residual coming in. Imagine if you had a $10,000 or $20,000 a month residual coming that just took care of you, right? The bills are all paid, family's fed, house, all that stuff. Everything's good. And then you have your dream of opening a bagel shop or whatever, right? Whatever it is that moves you. And you can do that not because you have to, but just because you love it, right? Because you want to. Because everything else, you don't have to worry about it, right?
Yeah. So that makes sense. And this is really a good vehicle to be able to do that. You know, it's saying, hey, this is a plan and this is one way I can make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I highly recommend it. Obviously.
I certainly hope so. Piggybacking on that. Okay, so now you got my attention. How do I select a direct sales company to want to go work for? What are the things to look for? What are maybe the things to avoid, or some things that you say, hey, that's a kind of a yellow flag or a red flag that should keep me out of there.
Sure.
Obviously, you're going to have a bias, that's saying Terra is the greatest thing out there. You're giving us examples.
You said it. You said it.
70% retention, et cetera. But and I would be alarmed if you didn't think it was the best thing. You should. But with that, what are some things that if I'm saying, maybe essential oils are interesting to me, maybe they're not, and I want to look for some other types of products. What do I look for in a company?
I love that you've asked that, because if you don't feel that your company is the best, then you're in the wrong company. Right. And I have dear friends that are top producers in many other companies, and we all feel the same. We all have the best company.
Yeah.
And we all love each other. We all get along. We all work together. That being said, if you're new and you're investigating and just looking out there, checking out what's out there, a couple things to keep an eye open for. Look at the length of time the company's been around, right? Typically, if they're brand new, it's a little bit maybe unproven, right? So that's something to keep in mind. There's also maybe more potential too, because they're new. So you have to balance that out. A big thing is the company customer focused? That's critical, because if it isn't, if it's just focused on distributors and getting people to sell, and that's their primary thing, that could become problematic with regulators. We've seen that happen. Companies that have been just focused on the business opportunity only have struggled. Some of them have been shut down. And so it's just something to be aware of.
Is it the Federal Trade Commission?
Federal Trade Commission,
Okay.
FTC.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't have at least 50%, and some say even more, of your revenue coming from end users and customers, then that's a red flag. Right? Like, I wouldn't even consider a company like that, because they're going to dance with one of those 3-letter agencies, and that's never good.
No.
That's never good.
No picnic.
Yeah, that's not fun, and you often don't win. So keep that in mind.
Sure.
Ultimately, the product needs to be something that you love.
Yeah.
Love. It can't, if you, for example, I had someone approach me years ago and wanted me to come work for them, and I don't drink coffee. And their product was coffee, and they had an amazing structure, and everything about it was wonderful. And I just looked at them and said, I just can't.
Right.
I just can't. And so, good luck to you. You'll find someone, and it'll be awesome. Right. And so you've got to be your own best customer. So the integrity of the ownership team. This is a really big one for me. I prefer my choice. In the years I've been doing this with multiple companies. Obviously, I've been with doTERRA for 10 years full-time, but prior to that, I worked with several different companies. And I love that the owners or the ownership team is a group of people.
Right.
Because, in my experience, this has just been my experience, when it's been a person or two, it goes to their head.
Right.
And they get kind of a messiah complex about them, and it starts to I've seen this happen in multiple companies, multiple times. It all becomes about them, and they become... when it all becomes about them, that's when the company crashes.
Wow.
And I've observed it multiple times. And so I love that we have a team. There's 7 of them. And they keep each other in check.
Right.
And so no one's getting the uber super ego that's going to go out and take over the world. And so to me, that's a big thing to look for. Another huge indicator is, are there people advancing? Like if you go on their social media or go on their website, are there people advancing in rank each month, right? If the last time someone advanced to a new high rank was 2 years ago,
momentum.
Probably, probably a good indicator that something's wrong.
Yeah.
There's not a system, maybe the product's not all that great. Something's up, right? If people aren't advancing on a regular basis. So look at that. Look at how you're being compensated, right? There's a lot of different styles and forms of compensation plans. I've written compensation plans, I've studied them. I have my preferences. They all work to some degree. Some of them favor the corporation more. Others favor the distributors more, which obviously I prefer. And so just make sure that you're comfortable, with how their compensation plan is structured. And then ultimately, I mentioned this earlier, culture. Yeah. What is the culture of the company? Is it actually making a change, or is it bling bling, mosh pit, money? I've had people not join my company because we were not hypey. Yeah. And they wanted the hype.
But they wouldn't be a cultural fit for you.
They wouldn't be a cultural, and so ultimately they probably wouldn't stay anyway, right? Because they wanted, but they didn't actually come because they wanted. I call them the gold chainers. They wanted that.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, well, that's not who we are. So we're probably not a good fit for you.
Right.
On the other hand, I've had gold chainers come thinking that they would change us. And we changed them, right? And they actually adapted, and kind of evolved into our culture. And so, but culture trumps all. So if the culture of the company is what you really connect with on a heart level, then I think you found a good home.
I can tell that was a list of some very informed considerations. So we know you've been around the block once or twice, but that's a great list for people to check off boxes as they're trying to make a decision here, because it's an important decision. The last thing you want to do is put a bunch of months or years into something and find out it wasn't the right thing.
Right.
Yeah. So
been there.
Yeah. Oh, you've been to that party.
Been there, done that party. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So good. I think you might have just saved a lot of people a lot of headache and heartache. So that's great.
Learn from our mistakes.
Yes. Well, listen, this has been a very stimulating conversation, Justin. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, and I wish you continued and ever-expanding success.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
To me, Justin Harrison is a sterling example of how direct marketing can be done with integrity and lead to a very bright future. For me personally, like so many episodes in this docuseries, I took this information, sent it off to my college-age son, and said, get involved in this. Find one direct marketing company that you're passionate about and start building a cash flow now while you're still in college so you can graduate with momentum. I think this opens up a world of possibilities for many people where doors seem shut and it looks like a struggle. Now I believe there's a path to new opportunity that nobody could have seen before. So thanks for watching this interview that I had with Justin Harrison. Wow, can you believe it? We have actually completed episode 5 now. And again, I just want to encourage you to own Money Revealed for all the obvious reasons that you can see. There's a wealth of information here. They say that organized information is knowledge, and organized knowledge is wisdom. And what we're trying to bring here is sincere wisdom that can be pivotal to you relative to your financial future. Now, episode 6 is coming up, and it's a really great episode, so make sure you carve out the time and you're ready for it. It's coming right up. Look forward to seeing you there.
I had been in sales for a number of years after the military, and then I did a real estate deal and never looked back. I've actually moved into multifamily properties. It's a fantastic game to play if you just get in and learn it and start playing and play it right. You could actually have these things just constantly produce money for you.
In the Western world, less than 1% of people retire wealthy at the age of 65. But if we truly want to empower the 99% to invest like the top 1%, we have to literally remove all barriers to entry. A lot of people say to me, well, $1, it's not going to change people's lives. And I say, well, I disagree with you. Because if I can change your habits, I can change your financial destiny.